On the rough frontier of Margrave, Talleyrand, a terrified woman clutches her child like her life depends on it, begging anyone at all to stop the monster wrecking their village. Are cut off mid-breath by a sharp, "Shut up." And then this tall warrior in ornate armor storms forward, long light hair whipping in the air, sneering that plain countryside bumpkins have the nerve to give him orders. He snaps at his subordinate Uriel to silence them at once, and the dark-haired man just gives a flat, "Yes, sir." Then a messenger rockets toward the commander, yelling that the Roch squad needs backup fast. Because yeah, they crushed 2 of the 3 demon bears, but 3 more of their own are wrecked and laid up. As he speaks, the beaten soldiers slump against the wall, and one of them whispers an apology for failing, swearing the demon bears were just small fry. The commander's face turns stone-hard, and he barks at the Roch squad to fall back. He'll handle the rest himself. His subordinate wastes no time, snapping back with a quick, solid confirmation. He whips toward the woods, striding in. Then a savage rustle bursts from the undergrowth, and out flashes the beast's massive, razor-sharp claws as it's finally revealed. From the shadows, a hulking demon bear lunges out, fangs snapping at the light, while the commander plants his feet and doesn't even flinch. A confident smirk snaps across his face as he faces the beast head-on, glad it finally showed up, and he vows to rip it apart limb from limb right now. Then boom, his focus gets shattered by a child's terrified scream, and he snaps his head around, stunned to see a small boy bolting through the woods like he's been there the whole time. The boy freezes in place, his face trapped in pure terror. Then the demon bear looms right behind him, jaws stretching open for a thunderous roar, while a low growl tears out of his chest. But the commander spots his opening and decides this is exactly what he's been waiting for, split that bear in half while it's distracted by the child. He raises his sword, and then a weird shiver hits him. Suddenly both the kid and the bear go stone still, staring straight past him at the impossible sight. A modern car has appeared out of nowhere. He stared at the impossible vehicle, and then it hit him, sharp and weird like a memory tearing loose. A young boy sprinting ahead, and the shock on his face as the truth finally clicked. The memory snapped into focus. Then a young man surged forward and shoved the boy out of the car's path, and the boy's breath caught as a terrifying realization stabbed through his confusion. This was it, the last moment before death. Right then, the demon bear surged at the child, and he snapped back into action. He shoved his arm forward, roaring a warning, "Look out." With no time left, he launched himself ahead, slamming the boy to safety right as the beast's claws crashed into him with brutal force. Pain crashed over him, and dread flooded in. He knew, with sick certainty, he was about to relive the exact accident that still haunted him. His men, stuck watching from afar, could only scream his title as he hit the ground. Then accident rang out, and that single word hung in the night like a haunting question. He jolted awake in a bed, a brutal pounding in his skull, and a man hovered at his side, asking how he felt as his thoughts spun out of place. The commander demanded news about his little brother, but the man looked totally lost. So the attendant stepped in, quizzing him on his name and job, and he finally snapped it out. Justin Avendier, commander of the 3rd Knights Order of the Kingdom of Lafios. As he talked, fresh memories slammed into his head. He'd reached the frontier a month ago, chasing rising monster trouble and the kids getting attacked. And he jerked back, drenched in sweat, stunned that these 4 memories were about to show up. Then it all snapped into focus. Naoki Mayo, the oldest of 8, had been raising his brothers while his parents stayed out of the picture. And just before he even graduated from university, he threw himself into the road to save his little brother. 2 memories slammed together, and the answer hit like a freight train. He had died in that accident, and somehow he'd been reincarnated. He dug up the light novel he used to obsess over, the one with the wicked god of annihilation, the saint who saved the country, and Justin, a total scoundrel who finally got murdered by the protagonist. His mind reeled at the impossible truth, so he lifted his head off the sick bed and asked, voice shaking, "Am I dreaming?" Oriole, his subordinate, swung around at once, concern written all over her face, and demanded what was wrong. He blurted out, voice shaking, asking if the kid he tried to save was truly safe. And when Oriole stared at him in shock, she told him the demon bear had been wiped out by the commander's counterattack just before the commander collapsed. The child, she said, only took a small hit and was already sent back to his parents. The moment the news hit, relief flooded his face, and a gentle smile bloomed because he was over the moon. The commander's soft expression floored Oriole, and she snapped around to the physician, demanding to know if he was sure the commander hadn't smashed his head. The doctor swore there was no head wound and that all injuries were healed, but he warned it might come with a temporary memory glitch. Now it all clicked. Yeah, the gap he felt from his subordinates finally made sense, just like he figured. The truth was ugly. The hem of this world was pure scoundrel. The truth hit him like a wrecking ball. He clapped a hand over his face, disgusted at just how pathetic he'd become. Oriole shot over at the sight of her commander's sudden panic and demanded to know what happened. As he muttered to himself about the awful things he might have done, Oriole's worry surged. Maybe her commander really did take a nasty head injury after all. Then asterisk knock knock asterisk hit from the open doorway, and another subordinate had arrived. Arno, the newcomer, burst in saying he heard the commander was awake and brought food. Then when the commander just looked up and said, "Oh, thanks," Arno's jaw nearly hit the floor as he stood there stunned, actually wondering if he'd heard gratitude or imagined it. Oriole lunged in and dragged Arno aside, hissing that the commander was still wiped out, then told him they'd shuffle the work schedules for the next few days and spread the word to the others. Arno nodded and called Oriole vice commander, and as Oriole stepped back, he urged the commander to finally rest, then slipped away after getting one more quiet, grateful thanks. He sank into his quarters and stared at his own mess like it was a joke. He was running the third night's order now, and it was stuffed with loud commoners who all knew the legend of him as a cold-hearted monster. The wild part was how a simple thank you could spark all this chaos, and just as he was spiraling in thoughts, a door clicked shut nearby. It all crushed down on him, and he collapsed back onto his bed, letting out a long, defeated sigh. He sprawled there with his palm pinned to his forehead, stunned by the impossible truth. He'd been reincarnated straight into the world of a novel. His mind slammed back to his old life, and he felt zero regret for his final choice, throwing himself in front of that car to save his brother. Yet one worry still gnawed at him. What happened to his brother after the crash? He couldn't help but worry. Had his mom and his other siblings been absolutely crushed by his sudden passing? But the fears from his old life got drowned instantly when one chilling thought hit him about now. If he really was Justin, did that mean he was destined to die the same way the villain did in the story? He twisted over and tried to talk himself out of the panic, even as he kept thinking. Yeah, Justin's a pompous villain, but the guy in this body didn't deserve a grim end. As he lay there, helplessness crashed over him. He couldn't even figure out what he was supposed to do next. He finally got himself together, realizing that spiraling over his fate would only work up his hunger, so he stared at the food left for him and decided to just dig in. His stomach growled like, "Yeah, that's the plan." He took one spoonful and his face twisted as the taste hit. Yeah, it wasn't awful, but it wasn't good either. It was flat and lifeless, missing any real depth, richness, or umami, like it only tasted like the bare ingredients. Then snap, he froze, eyes bulging as the truth slammed into him. He stares at the bland food in front of him, stuck wondering if this is really the world's real food culture. Because the meals he'd been dreaming about for nights, they're a total letdown. Maybe they're scraping by with no money, or maybe this region just can't afford salt and spices. He decides there's no point ruining his peace over it, so he steels himself to hit town later and hunt for something better, something that makes sense, while for now, everyone tells him to rest. As he strides down a calm, sun-drenched corridor, a sudden scream cracks through the air, and he jolts wide-eyed in shock. The racket pulls him straight into the mess hall, where his knights are stirring pure chaos. One impatient brute snaps, "Is breakfast even ready?" Another steps in, snarling that if they don't rush, he'll cut them down and the monsters with them. A third knight tries to slam on the brakes, urging everyone to hurry and settle it. Justin steps in like a storm with a smile, greets them with a steady "good morning," and snaps, "Stop picking on the cook." Then he plants a firm hand on the loudest knight's head, right as the commander appears and the guy yelps in shock. His men stand there frozen, stunned, totally confused, and sure they're dreaming, because their commander didn't just greet them, he even reprimanded them. Justin brushes off their shock, turns to the cook, shoots off an apology for the disruption, and asks to be shown the kitchens. The cook blinks, then quickly nods and agrees. He's marched straight into the plain, neat kitchen, like the next move is already waiting for him. The cook fidgets and asks if he needs anything, so Justin tells him he just wanted to double-check. Then, as he inspects the crates of produce, he finds everything looks fine, no trouble with quality or amount, until it hits him. The seasoning and spices must be off. And suddenly that memory crashes back in, because in the story, Justin was the one responsible for procuring it. Once his theory checks out, he rushes to the cook and blurts out an apology for the chaos, and for the complaints his men kept firing back. Then he whips around to his soldier and barks that they'd better behave while they eat. The knights snap rigid, and they all shout sorry again and again, leaving the cook staring, completely dumbfounded. As he strides away, the knights huddle and whisper about what they just saw the commander do, and they all match what the vice commander warned them about. One even says the scolding sounded just like a mother's. From the far end of the hall, Oriel snaps, calling out, "Hey, Commander, why are you up and moving so early?" He speaks up, begging the commander to stay put in his room, but Justin just grins and says he's heading into town for a while. So Oriel nods and accepts it, then only warns him to be careful, promising he'll handle the patrol and everything else. He lifts a hand in a small, easy motion, thanking them with straight-up sincerity. Now he steps through the roaring town streets again, back in his uniform, and the scene hits him like a shockwave. Because he never left home before, every bit of this busy world feels strangely foreign, and he can't stop wondering if he'll actually survive. His mind snaps back to the mission. Sure, the market can cough up basic ingredients, but the top-shelf spices he craves mean one thing: a real shop. He steels himself, forces a confident smile, and steps in, the doorbell ringing like a drum roll as he walks through. The shopkeeper's cheerful welcome gets snatched away the second he sees the commander. His friendly smile twists into a full-on menacing glare, and Justin can't help but panic as he tries to rein in his own face. His terrifying presence hits the shopkeeper like a punch. He stammers in shock, instantly realizing it's the commander of the Vendier Knight's order. Justin straight up asks what he wants, and when the shopkeeper tries to follow, Justin just says he's there to buy some items. The nervous shopkeeper snaps that his shop only carries spices, everyday goods, and armor, no surprises. Justin doesn't flinch at all. He tells him, "Yeah, I know," and says he's here to browse anyway. Then the man gestures him inside like, "Go on." He starts pawing through the shelves and snatches up a jar, grinning because it's packed with spices he already knows: nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves. Then he flickers with a wild thought about whether every Japanese light novel world has this handy perk, and shrugs it off, relieved to have everything within reach. His relief instantly turns sour the moment he sees the price. Those spices are insanely expensive, and what would have been pocket change back in his old world now costs as much as a whole person's yearly income here. Even with the price hitting hard, Justin still goes for it. Coins clink like thunder on the counter as the shopkeeper beams and thanks him. With that tiny bag tucked in his grip, Justin leans in and tells him there's one more thing he needs to ask, lighting the shopkeeper's curiosity on fire. He asks where he can find thyme and rosemary, and the woman at the counter tells him straight, if he's here for herbs, he should head to the drugstore. The shopkeeper bows and swears he'll wait, and Justin nods back, promising he'll return again. As he strides through town, one idea keeps hitting him. Maybe he should try the drugstore suggestion. It sparks a memory. Here, herbs are treated like real medicine, just like Chinese medicine back in his old world. And with that, he decides he's going to try it. That hits him like a wake-up call. This world really feels like fantasy. He pulls out a magic bag that can swallow up to 10 times its size, taps it with a grin, and slips his fresh purchases inside as the thing glows faintly and drinks them in. As he strides through town, nobody misses him. People whisper the moment they spot him because they know exactly who he is, the commander of the Third Knight's Order. Whispers snap into ugly gossip in seconds. One woman leans in and asks the other if she's heard the rumor that he's trying to hit on the Crown Prince's fiancée, then spits out that he's got to be suicidal. Another woman jumps in, swearing she heard he got booted out of his house because of it, and that they shoved him into the Third Knight's lineup just to get him out of the way. The first woman can't even believe it, like, does he seriously have the nerve to mess with the Crown Prince? Their contempt doesn't stop at him. It spreads across the whole order. They sneer that the Third Knights, men have always been infamous for their dreadful upbringing, and swear they've only gotten worse ever since he took command. Suddenly, one of the women chokes on a gasp and shouts for everyone to go silent, while Justin whips his head over his shoulder at them. They can tell he looks like he could wipe out monsters on his own, but the real fear hits in the quiet that follows. They're not sure he isn't the monster, too. He whips his gaze away, looking drained, and thinks, they hate me with everything they've got, asterisk. But he can't really blame them because the Third Knight's Order isn't just tough, they're downright violent. He stands alone in that paved square, sighing hard, because he just realized the weight crushing down on him. He can't just fix his own image, he has to rebuild the entire Knight's Order's reputation. He strides up the stone steps, boots clacking on the pavement, zeroing in on the drugstore, just ahead, then spots his chance to listen as a nearby voice begs in panic, promising payment for something they need right now. The chaos finally makes sense. An embarrassed shopkeeper is yelling at two little kids, swearing his no is final. Justin strides into the mess and asks what's going on. The shopkeeper whips around, startled, and instantly realizes Justin is the commander from the Third Knight's Order. He quickly lets it slip that the kids won't stop badgering him for herbs, even though they've got zero money. And when the shopkeeper tries to chase them off, Justin just stands there thinking hard, hand to his chin, like he's already hunting for the answer. His gaze snaps off the man and lands on the two kids huddled together, terrified. He jabs a finger at them and demands to know why they need those herbs, and the two just stare at each other, frozen, afraid to answer. The boy finally blurts it out. No food, no money, and their mother's sick. He snaps that her health got wrecked trying to cover for their father, and for a moment you can almost see her in bed, coughing weakly, fighting for every breath. Justin keeps the tale going. His dad, a simple craftsman, got drafted to battle the monsters that suddenly started popping up more and more, got hurt in the fighting, and now only sits around drinking while Justin soaks it all in, crushed by their family's tragic fate. His face tightens into pure resolve, and he whips around to the shop owner, ordering him to hand over the herbs the children need. And more he's about to rattle off, promising he'll cover every coin himself. The kids just freeze, stunned beyond words. The shop owner presses him, "Are you really sure?" But Justin waves it off, saying any extra cost is basically a tip, and then he turns to the kids to calm them down until he drops the real catch. He wants something back. A sly, knowing smile flickers across his lips as he looks down at them, and he asks for one thing: "Take me to your father." The little girl stares up at him, eyes blazing with worry, and asks if he's about to do something nasty to her. So Justin flashes a big, reassuring smile, lifts his hands in a calming gesture, and swears he's got no intention of hurting her. He strode through the city as night crashed down, only to realize he'd completely lost track of time because he'd been too deep in conversation. The talk wasn't some random chat. It was with the kid's father, who poured out his heartbreaking story. An injury from his army days turned into brutal complications, and soon he couldn't work anymore. Swallowing pride hurt too much, so instead of becoming another burden on his wife, he drowned his pain in alcohol. Justin knew that if you wrote the guy off as pathetic, it wouldn't fix anything. It would just crush the whole family even deeper. He couldn't believe it. This man was good deep down. Yet the military left him with no compensation after an injury wiped him out of work. And once he was back home, resolve lit a fire in his chest as he pushed to demand an audience with the Margrave. He spun back to the kids, softly ruffled the boys' hair, and told them to look after their parents. Then the girl beamed and called him Mr. Commander, while her brother echoed it, thanking him as the Knights Order's big brother. Their heartfelt gratitude wouldn't stop. They kept shouting for their big brother over and over. As he watched them disappear, grit hardened his face into pure, unshakable determination. He clenched his fist and steadied his shaking resolve. He knew he could make it. He knew he could still flip the whole story. All alone on that street, he stared down his purpose. If he wanted to flip this one-way road from ruin, he'd have to march straight ahead himself. And it would be a long, long time before the man they called Justin Cross became the final stop. He tilted his face to the starry sky and accepted the truth. Because yeah, he was the big brother now. He hauled himself back to the lodgings and found the building totally empty. Relief hit for a split second. Then duty slammed back in as his commander, and he barked, sharp as steel, "Prepare for mock combat, come on." The moment his order hit the air, it was executed right away. Inside the training hall, swords clashed with a sharp ring, and the Knights of the Third Order tore into fierce mock combat as the stone walls screamed back. He kept his eyes on the sparring, a small smile curling on his lips, and he couldn't help but admire how hard they were training through the night, every clash of steel cutting through the silence. His calm approval got ripped apart in an instant. Someone shouted that Cassius was hurt. Another voice snapped that the enemy's blade had slipped off his block. Cassius clutched his arm and insisted it was nothing, but his comrade wouldn't hear it. He demanded they fetch a healer right now. Before anyone could even blink, the commander dropped to his knees by the fallen knight, face blazing with urgency. Then he barked at Cassius to lift the wound high above the heart. Taking charge, he barked for Oriol to toss him something he could use as a binding, then snapped his orders at the rest of the knights to keep training. Cassius lifted his gaze, and in that instant, startle hit his commanders with a sudden, brutal focus that fixed right on him. While the other knights stared on, Justin told Cassius they were heading to the treating room and offered his shoulder to lean on, only for Cassius to snap, "I'm fine." Justin ignored the protest, yanked a bandage into place over the wound, and warned him ice cold that healing magic could mend what was there. But it wouldn't bring back the blood he'd already lost. The wounded knight's stubborn fight snapped the commander's control. So Justin yanked Cassius up by the chin, eyes blazing like a last stand, and roared for him to just listen to his big brother. The outburst yanked the breath out of him, sweat streamed down his brow. Those words hung in the air and shock crashed across his face as realization dawned. Big brother. The very next morning, Justin Devendier jolts awake with a massive yawn, and that bright early light spills into his quarters. He strides through a sunlit corridor, and a trainee bows so deep it practically snaps, shouting, "Good morning, Commander Justin." Justin just flicks a casual nod and answers with a quick "morning," like it's no big deal. He keeps marching forward, arms stretched behind his head, and the thought hits him. If he hadn't been reincarnated, he'd be stuck packing lunchboxes for his brothers right now. But it's way too early to meet a Margrave, so he slams the brakes on his plans and changes course. With his mind made up, he strides down the long hallway, determined to drop in for the morning training session too. Their eyes locked onto the training grounds, where the knights were already trading blows, swords clashing across the morning air. One night the trainees whisper back and forth, "Cassius, does your arm not hurt anymore?" Cassius flexes the injured arm and grins, saying it feels as good as new, and he swears it's the healing magic that did it. Justin storms up to another knight and demands, "What was that all about?" The knight freezes, totally thrown off, so Justin points the moment out, the thing that caught them off guard when he was treating Cassius's wound. The knight stammers that it happened because the commander's first aid was flawless from the very start. Behind them, an instructor keeps talking while Cassius sits there, and the other knights murmur in shocked amazement. Whipping his head back to Justin, he drops the words he just heard with a fierce, pleading urgency. "Just listen to what your big brother says." And Justin freezes in shock, while Cassius, on watch and the other knight, smirks with pure amusement. Later, Cassius and his companion hit the ground and finally grabbed some breath. One of them still couldn't believe it, saying he'd never in a million years thought the commander would drop a line like that. Justin, still in his training gear, brings a hand to his chin and stares at the mess like it's supernatural. Because he's sure nobody will believe a word if they try, until a quiet memory tugs at him. A calm, look-alike figure leaning in and whispering, "Thanks." At the training grounds, the knights' talk instantly shifted to their commander's weird new behavior. Cassius told how Justin didn't just thank him, but actually offered support by giving him his shoulder, a totally wild break from the usual curt dismissals. He replayed the scene in vivid detail, saying the old healer, and he both froze when Justin insisted the caches had to be the first ones to offer their thanks. The other knights stared in disbelief, then broke into laughter. One swore the ruthless commander couldn't possibly say something like that. Another teased that he'd finally woken up to love, but the third felt the whole idea crawl under his skin, giving him goosebumps. Their laughs died instantly when a heavy boot slammed onto the nearby stone, and a quiet, curious "oh" drifted through the air. Between two trainees, Commander Justin Devendier stepped out with his arms crossed and that creepy grin plastered on his face, then teased them for acting like morning training was no big deal, judging and poking fun at everyone while they played it cool. With a quiet chuckle, he said their session was perfect, then pointed out their basics were getting rusty and ordered a brutal bonus, 1,000 swings for everyone in the mix. Then he zeroed in on Cassius and tapped his arm, and Justin declared that because Cassius's arm had just healed, the punishment didn't apply, sparking an instant roar of "That's not fair" from the other knights. Justin's grin cracked wider as he clamped onto Cassius' shoulder, then laid it out. If he wanted this new plan, Cassius would run long distances to hammer his legs and protect his lower back, and Justin would keep a sharp watch on his health, threatening him right to his face to confirm he was actually happy with the deal. As the commander marched the unfortunate knight away, everyone else just stared. One guy muttered that the poor fellow was doomed, while Cassius, meanwhile, could only stammer out a grateful "thank you." Justin snapped at the remaining trainees to keep grinding until lunch, then slumped over to dejected Cassius, gave him a shaky pat on the back, and promised him a reward if he pushed through, telling him to brace for what was coming next. After that brutal training, the knights start groaning like their bones are burning. One can barely lift his arms, another whines that his legs are shot, and a dark-haired knight snaps at them to watch their mouths. But they all end up agreeing on one thing. They're starving, so they bolt for the cafeteria. They burst into the noisy hall, and one of them spots it right away. Those knights out on patrol are already digging in, so he shouts for the others to grab their food fast. As they press on, a sweet aroma hits their noses, and their fellow knights dig in with big smiles like nothing could stop them. "Is there some special menu today?" they blurt out. Right then, Commander Justin Vendier, now dressed casual, steps into view and greets them like it's all part of the plan. The moment Cassius spots him, he shoots off a demand for the reward he was promised for finishing training, and the commander just nods calmly, hands him a bowl of soup, and tells him to taste it. So Cassius, totally thrown off, takes a cautious sip. He shrugs and says it's just the usual soup. No real reward. Then Justin gives him a faint smile, tells him to chill, and casually rolls a tiny dark sphere in his hand. His eyes sharpen as he unveils the real prize. He holds up one lone peppercorn and declares it the reward. Cassius clocks it instantly and realizes it's surrogate. The commander then starts crushing peppercorns in a mortar and pestle, and one other night, he's so shocked that he blurts out in disbelief, swearing the spice is black pepper. Murmurs ripple through the night as they digest the news. One guy swears he's only ever heard of a pepper by name, and another quickly figures the amount they're using could burn through a gold coin, basically a whole month of their wages. After seasoning the soup, Justin shoves the bowl into Cassius's hands and orders him to eat, then slides another bowl to the head chef and demands he pass it out to the other knights, who nod and agree. Cassius grabs a spoonful, and the second it hits his tongue, his eyes snap wide with pure astonishment. He blurts out that it tastes totally different than usual, and that it's insanely good. Commander Justin Avendier lets out a chuckle at their shock, then admits he just cranked up the soup's saltiness and tossed in basil for that perfect kick, asking them, with a smirk, if they really think a delicious meal can't be the ultimate motivation. He whips around to his vice commander, Oriel, and lays out his case. Knights bleed away vital nutrients every time they sweat, so they've got to refuel or they'll never stay sharp or move right. And Oriel, chin in his hand, finally admits the commander's argument hits the mark. The chef, right there too, couldn't believe it. He got why pepper adds flavor, but it never once hit him that tossing in medicinal leaves could do the same, and Oreo beside him just stared down, mortified that his own view was that small. He gets all flustered, swearing he doesn't deserve compliments like that. Then Justin stays cool and shuts it down, telling the chef he should be proud. Somehow, the man has kept them fed and steady even with a tight budget. Justin whips around to the assembled knights with the chef's answer in hand and fires off one simple question. Do you want delicious meals from now on? Cassius explodes with an obvious, full-throttle yes. Then she grins with total confidence and lays out his plan. The night ship docks once a month so they can buy their own drinks, and suddenly the food money stretches further, letting the head chef cook with his real talent instead of sweating costs, and it all comes down to whether they choose it. At night, everyone erupts in agreement. Cassius barks that there's zero reason to overthink it, and the others jump on his words immediately, all ready to chip in. Once it seems locked in, Justin turns to Oriol and fires off the question. Is he against the idea? Oriol fires back that he's totally on board with the plan, then offers to take the fundraising matter to the administrative clerk, while Justin shoots him an approving look, thanking him for it. With the chaos finally settled, Justin waves everyone down to sit. Then Cassius doubles over, clutching his stomach as it roars, and fires off to his commander that seasoning just isn't cutting it, because it's begun. Another night, he playfully whacks Cassius on the back of the head for that outburst, and Cassius just shrugs it off, grinning at his bowl like, "This looks amazing, and I'm not being told twice to eat." Right before Cassius could take his first bite, Justin Avendier's voice snapped through the air and killed the moment. He ordered Cassius to do something important before eating, shut down his guess about washing up, and insisted with iron certainty that he had to say thanks for the food first. He said it was their must-do thanks to the cooks, and even to the food itself, because if they didn't, they'd never taste it at all. Then another night, he heard the talk and snapped that saying a prayer before meals was a ritual only the rich families actually bothered with. The other knights huddled in low murmurs, and one swore something felt off about their commander. Then another cracked a laugh and admitted he hadn't prayed since he was a kid, but deep down they all knew they had to do it anyway. With the order hanging in the air, the knight snapped his hands together and awkwardly launched into a thankful prayer for whoever had brought the meal. In unison, every single knight dropped their heads and roared out their thanks, and Justin watched from afar with his arms locked across his chest. When the ritual finally ended, they dug in, Cassius, eyes bulged with shock at the insane flavor, and his companion just grinned, savoring every single bite like it was made for them. A look of deep thought washed over Justin's face as he watched them, and suddenly he remembered. This tradition was exactly like the one he saw in Japan. His reflection shattered the moment his aide barged in, saying Commander Justin's request for an audience with a Margrave had been approved. But the messenger froze, like he couldn't bring himself to deliver what came next. The story snaps to a breathtaking view of Margrave Talleyrand's colossal manor, an intimidating fortress of stone and power. Now in a sharp formal uniform, Justin strides through the manor's enormous, echoing hall, even though he never saw a summons coming. And in his gut, he's already decided what this is. Someone wants him gone, and they're doing it themselves. That's what it feels like, especially with everything he has going on with her. Her mind snaps back to why she's been summoned, Diana Tolerand. She's the only daughter of a Margrave and the real bombshell. She's the crown prince's fiancée. He replayed the familiar tale in his head, where his counterpart, burning with hate for the prince, had grabbed Diane and forced her into a relationship. This path spiraled into heartbreak for her, thrown away as nothing more than a sub-heroine. And then, just like that, she ended her own life, leaving her story brutally cut short. As he strode along, he twisted his face in disgust, realizing that Justin in that tale was a truly despicable man, and he vowed to set the record straight, both with his main business and with her. Because for now, the real Justin was only just starting to crash into her life. A servant eyed him and said, "Lord Tolerand himself sent me. Come on, I'll show you the way." Justin only nodded, and the attendant guided him straight ahead. Attendant's knuckles slammed hard against the heavy door. Then he loudly declared they were here. Lord Justin de Vendier had just arrived. A rough, growling voice from inside barked, "Come in." Justin stepped into the room, bowed like a pro, and introduced himself with total respect. Then he thanked the Margrave and made sure his words landed. Margrave Tolerand was waiting right away behind a huge desk, with a line of uniformed men standing on either side, and they all nailed him with cold, uninviting stares the moment he walked in. He's planted behind his desk, guarded by 3 ruthless men, then he waves Justin to the chair. Because with security this tight, Justin can't help but wonder why the Margrave thinks he's so deadly, even in a boring old office. Justin bows deep in response, and his thanks pours out the moment he makes that gesture. He straightens up with a faint, knowing smirk, certain his perfectly polite act will shock them, because none of them have ever seen him behave this well before, and the stunned looks on 2 guards tell him his little performance is already working. Justin turns to the Margrave and says, "You look calm, but you're surrounded by heavy guards." Then he leans in and tells him he's come to report a problem he uncovered in town that needs immediate attention, so the Margrave can't help but ask, "What urgent business is it?" Just as everyone settles in, Justin makes it clear. This isn't a small problem, it's the Margrave's land, and public order has gotten worse fast, in a way that's plain to see. With his fingers steepled, the Margrave leans in and demands Justin explain. He keeps going, claiming the townspeople swear their lord is cruel, treating his own people like throwaway things. And that harsh accusation makes one guard snap, stepping forward to demand what Justin just said. Guard Clement explodes, screaming at Justin for having the nerve to talk to his lordship like that, until Margrave calmly lifts a hand and shuts him down, telling Clement to stop so Lord Vendier can finish. Then Justin takes over, steering the conversation to ask what the policy is for conscripted citizens who get injured fighting monsters and carry those brutal complications for life. The Margrave lays out his whole system. He pays military compensation only to the men who serve right under him, wipes the injured off duty because he won't shove them back into a fight, and if they were in the militia, they can just march right back to their old jobs. Justin's sharp comeback lands hard. He fires back, asking with total respect if that policy really isn't just another way of treating those people like disposable pawns. Then he drops his final bombshell. He's just met a former craftsman and his family, a man who was cleared from conscription after a brutal injury, and the Margrave, completely blindsided, can only spit Justin's words back as a stunned question. Justin keeps going, telling how the injured craftsman's family shattered. He turned bitter because he couldn't work anymore, his wife stepped in and wrecked her own health, and their starving kids had to beg a pharmacist for medicinal herbs just to keep their mother alive. Margrave Talleyrand admits, "Sure, Justin pushed me to get you medicine." But then he snaps that bandages don't cure the real problem, so he turns the question back on them. Is dragging people into conscription, and then pretending he knows nothing really the same as calling him cruel. The Margrave hammers the point, demanding to know if Justin truly expects him to fund a pension for every injured person until they're fully satisfied, warning that such a plan is impossible and would drag the whole land down. Then Justin shuts the idea down instantly. So instead of beating around the bush, he pitches real, doable fixes, free clinics in the slums, and jobs anyone can handle, even people with injuries. And then he hits the Margrave with the real question. Why can't you save your own people this way? The Margrave leans back, eyes like daggers, and demands why Justin even bothers with plans like this for his own sake. Justin shoots back that there's no benefit for him at all, because the gain belongs to the land's people, or maybe the Margrave himself. Talleyrand pauses like he's weighing his options, then nods and admits he gets it. He'll act fast and come up with a real solution. With his eyes shut, Justin jumps in, thanking him for even trying. But the Margrave's face changes instantly. Then he throws in a warning. He'll hear any sensible proposal, yet something about this whole situation just won't make sense to him. His voice drops as he spills the real reason for his suspicion. And he just can't wrap his head around Justin bringing up that topic with anything but a hidden agenda. Then he blasts the fact that he's already heard how Justin has been treating his daughter. Hearing that, Justin's face tightens. He calls out the Margrave's real worry and bluntly promises he'll never speak with Miss Diane again, swearing on his family's name to prove he means it. The Margrave sizes him up with a cynical grin, basically saying it'd be awesome if Justin could actually hold that vow. Then the Margrave turns to go, and Justin silently admits the bitter truth. The Margrave never trusts him, and that's not changing. Elsewhere, a light-haired young woman stared at the mess with a heavy heart, knowing that even if she finally stopped pushing Diane away, the truth would still hit. The main heroine was destined to show up any moment. She clung to this prophecy, one shining, unstoppable saint who'd rise to crush the evil choking the world. Because the crazy part was, the main heroine was that saint. Meanwhile, Justin Vendier stared at the prophecy from a new angle, replaying a novel he'd read. Because in that tale, Diane was already gone the moment the saint showed up. So the crown prince and the saint could finally lock together with zero roadblocks. He couldn't stop wondering what would happen to the world if Diane truly lived. And deep down, he prayed she'd finally get her happiness. So he rolled out his theory to Margrave Talleyrand, starting with one sharp question. Had the Margrave noticed how the monsters had been exploding in number lately? He claimed it all pointed to the wick of God's influence, and that meant the saint was about to show up. The Margrave agreed the monsters had surged, but snapped back, demanding to know what any of this had to do with his daughter. He kept going, laying out the brutal truth. If a saint ever showed up, it probably wouldn't be Diane. Then he snapped the question that mattered most. Since saints were supposed to marry into the royal family, what would happen to Diane? The Margrave erupted in denial, screaming that it couldn't be true, and that there was zero proof his daughter wasn't the saint. When the Margrave erupted, Justin didn't even flinch. He stayed stone calm and said the answer was obvious. The crown prince would probably throw Dionysides aside, forcing her to quietly step back, and that brutal weight crushed down on Talleyrand. Then he shot up from his seat, straightening his uniform like a switch flipped, and admitted this was all guesswork right now. But he insisted the Margrave had to know what was happening. His words tossed the Margrave into a spiral of suspicion, sweat beading on his temple as he stared hard, trying to figure out what Justin Avendier was truly up to. Justin stood by the door and dropped a simple, calming explanation. No secret agenda, just pure regret for what he'd done before, and he asked for forgiveness for how rude he'd been. He shuts down the talk with the Margrave, admitting straight up that words can't buy trust, and promises he'll prove his sincerity with actions from here on out, then asks to be excused. As the massive doors start to slam shut behind him, a guard calls out to Margrave Talleyrand, who doesn't even stand. He just shoots back a short, hard yes. Left alone in that sudden, crushing silence, the Margrave's composure finally shatters, his face tight, his eyes distant, and as he mutters to himself, he can't shake the question. Is the Vendier who just walked out really the one he thought he knew? Meanwhile, Justin strides down the hall, or maybe it's Nate hallway, and a smug smirk snaps across his face as he thinks, "This is my first move," driving forward toward the future he's quietly scripting. In the kitchens of the Third Knight's Order, the workers laid out herbs like they were prepping for war. Time for banishing that fishy stink, rosemary for blasting meat with flavor, and laurel leaves to make every stew smell like victory. Right after that, the young kitchen boy leans over and grills the Knight Commander, Justin Devontier. How does he know all of this? And the nearby cook can't believe it either, swearing he never thought medicinal herbs belonged anywhere near a recipe. He tells him he stumbled onto it while researching medicinal herbs, but then drops the truth. Back in his past life, he cooked for his family every single day. With a sly smirk, he says, "You never know what skills might save you," and the boy just stares, blown away. Then Oriel, his vice commander, tracks him down, greets him, and lays it all out. The crew's agreed, and they've got permission from every order member to snatch 2 silver coins per person from their monthly salary for food expenses. Justin keeps the numbers rolling, figuring it'll land at roughly 1 gold coin, maybe a little shaky, sure. But he weighs it, nods, and decides they'll make it work on that budget. Then he lays out the plan. An admin officer will handle the shopping, but only after the cooks hand over a list of what they need. Oriol balks at it, thinking it sounds like too much to pile onto the usual job of managing provisions. and lays out his reasoning. He isn't trying to scare people, he's just painfully aware that a big pile of money can make anyone slip, so he tells them. If someone steals the members' contributions and it's uncovered, the culprit might count themselves lucky if all they get is a brutal beating. To stop those suspicions before they even start, he orders one of their own knights to ride alongside the shopper, and Oriole snaps into it right away, pushing for the most intimidating guy they've got to scare the doubts into silence. The vice commander leans in and asks if the knight's real job is guarding him. Justin nods, saying yes, but adds that they'll also stop merchants from ripping them off, then turns to Oriole and orders her to pick the perfect person for the role. Oriole doesn't hesitate for a second. He jabs a finger straight at his commander and loudly names Justin as the perfect pick, claiming Justin knows exactly what they're buying and that there's zero chance he'd pocket a single coin. Justin freezes, stunned, and blurts that it's only because his face looks so scary, right? Oriole shuts that down immediately with a flat refusal. Crack that weary look on your face. Oriole, his vice commander, drops the final piece of his argument with a confident grin. If the legendary commander himself shows up in person to shop, then merchants will have to deal straight, no overcharging allowed. Torn out of his armor and into a plain turtleneck, he finally caved. "Fine, I'll go," he muttered. Before the words even landed, Oriole snapped, "I'll take your spot on the forest patrol," pointing out that Justin had just finished being on duty and really needed to rest, while she would cover the town patrol instead. Oriole shot a sharp look at his subordinate, mocking how fast he snapped into a decision, then quizzed him. Did he really want good food that badly? Oriole scratched the back of his head and smirked. "So, what do you say?" Justin immediately clocked what the vice commander was getting at. The budget wasn't going to cut it. He turned and barked for an administrative officer named Aller. Through the second-story window, he leaned down and talked to the head chef below, admitting he'd planned all along to leave the negotiations to the chef from the start, and ordering him to weigh every item he was about to buy. The chef nodded like it was music to his ears, and he agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, right on the town streets, a bunch of knights from the Third Order rolled through on a laid-back patrol. One guy yawned and stretched, laughing that they were lucky to get a simple walk, and Simon cut in. "No, it's a patrol," before admitting it still beats out the monster killing by a mile. Right when Simon, Gaspert, and Arno were about to get comfortable, Commander Justin burst in with an administrative officer at his side, and the stern words hit hard. They weren't there to fool around. They had to keep their dignity and stay fully aware, the way Night Order members are supposed to. As the commander strode ahead, one knight leaned in and muttered to his buddy that Justin had been acting straight-up weird. So of course it felt ironic, because the commander was usually the one preaching knightly dignity and chewing out anyone who showed even a hint of disrespect. By night's end, everybody had figured out the commander came to town to shop. One guy was already whining that they'd lose their chance to slack off, while another practically bounced, grinning and guessing the food would finally get better that night, because why drag an administrative officer along unless something was about to improve? Justin overheard it all and just thought, "I don't know." Their excitement exploded into cheers, and they started shouting at their commander, "Hurry up," while also yelling, "Calm down." He stopped in front of the building, whipped around to Florent, the administrative officer, and demanded to know if Florent knew the pharmacy's owner, confirming they were one of their suppliers. Then he shoved over a list, told Florent to take over the business talks, and Florent immediately stepped in without hesitation. As he strode down the market street, a sharp, familiar whistle ripped his attention. Mark, the young boy, waving like crazy and yelling, "Big brother," while his sister Chloe stood right beside him. He pulled up to greet them, quizzing if they were headed out for a walk, and the knights stared in shock as Mark explained that now their mother was back on her feet. Their older brother finally got to hang out with them way more. The kids went on, saying they'd met him before in some seriously weird way, and Mark smiled as he added that their dad had grown kinder and was pushing harder at work, all because their big brother made it happen. When he heard their good news, a warm smile burst across his face. Then he gently ruffled both kids' heads, beaming like he couldn't be prouder of them. Their eyes went wide as he suddenly showed warmth, smiling and gently patting a child's head like it was nothing, and the shock hit his subordinates hard from afar. Florent even started to wonder if his glasses were broken or something. As he pushed on, he caught the townsfolk's whispers floating over the street, talking about his feared reputation like it was already sealed in stone, and it hit him hard. This is exactly how people saw him from the outside. He snapped back to the kids, threw out a quick apology that he had work calling his name, and promised he'd come back with a souvenir. Mark's face lit up like a spark right on cue. With that, the goodbyes hit, kids waving like crazy, shouting bye-bye, big brother, while he lifted his hand in a final farewell salute. He spun around and strode off, his whole posture snapping rigid in an instant. The curly-haired knight stared after him, stunned by how those kids clung to the commander like he was their real brother, especially with his notorious history at the training grounds. The knight tiptoed closer, whispering if the commander might have been embarrassed, and Justin spun around with a furious glare, roaring that it was all nonsense. Then he barked at the knight to forget what he'd just witnessed, sending the poor subordinate reeling in pure terror. Teeth clenched hard, a deep blush surged across his face. This internal war was pure agony, because with Justin's memories in his head up to now, he finally understood what was happening, yet being called Big Brother by those kids in this moment made him feel utterly mortified. Shaking the feeling off, he snapped his head back to his subordinates, voice like a blade, order them to stay quiet and not lay a hand on anyone passing by, and they immediately fell in line. Then he turned to his admin officer. All right, Florent, let's go, because this Big Brother deal. Yeah, it's barely getting started. The pharmacy door whooshes open with a sharp jolt, and the proprietor, big, stout, and mid-task, whips around, eyes widening as Knight Commander Vendier strides in, escorted by an associate. Or nervously blurts out what he can do, but Commander Vendier keeps his cool, swivels to his administrative officer Florent, and says he'll hand the rest to him. He steps forward, tries to calm things down, and tells the owner, "These manatees are your shop. Here, the paper with the list." It spells out the extra items they still have to deliver to the knight's barracks, and the owner grabs it to review. Florent cuts him off, making it crystal clear. That order isn't headed to the infirmary at all, it's going straight to the kitchen. The owner blurts out that he's totally lost about the destination, and Von Deer slides in close, voice dropping as he admits he's cooking up a new use for the herbs, planning to order them non-stop, but only if the owner keeps proving himself, of course. His expression turns into a chilling grin as he asks, "Can I trust you?" And the pharmacy owner panics, stammering and sweating like crazy, insisting the commander can absolutely leave it with him. Meanwhile, two Avendier's knights watch from a nearby window. One smirks and says the pharmacy owner is terrified because the commander is flexing his power just to squeeze a cheaper price, and the other nods like, "Yep, this is the same brutal commander we've gotten used to." Biden fires back that ever since the commander's injury, right after his kindness to a child and that Big Brother remark, something has felt off ever since, and his companion just swats the idea away like it's nothing. On his very first night, Simon snorts at the idea, yanking his own cheeks into a warped, forced grin just to copy what he thinks Von Dier's smile would look like, while mocking the fact that the commander's real laugh is way more sinister. Simon's mockery gets snuffed out the second a chillingly calm voice slides in right behind him, "Commander Von Dier." He fires back, asking what kind of smile that is, then demands Simon show him too. Simon just freezes, stammering, "I was only joking." His grip clenches around the knight's throat, squeezing out a sharp scream of pain, and the other men freeze in stunned silence, wondering if this brutal tyrant is really their commander, the same man who used to be so gentle. Releasing him, he strides off through the town square, grinning like he just scored the whole thing for a steal, and the knights left behind immediately murmur. One whispers that when the commander leans in with a smile like that, you'd better stay silent. As Florin closes in, the commander lays it out. His negotiation didn't come from threats at all. It worked because he promised big, steady bulk orders. Then he admits the truth. Juggling money for a whole household is brutal, so you've got to use every bit of leverage you can, as long as you keep it ethical. Then he orders Florent to go all in for the afternoon training, and as he keeps moving, he catches a knight blurting out loud about food, like his stomach is already roaring. Then that noise snaps someone else's mind to Cassius, and the commander's face twitches as he hears the chatter. His focus snaps to a sudden commotion up ahead. Something's wildly noisy right in front of the barracks. He strode up to the gates, and as the knight shrouded him, Knight snapped, demanded answers, and asked what the heck had happened. The knight barrels toward him, and with a voice packed in pure panic, he blurts out that the vice commander and the rest are already locked in a fight with monsters. In the blink of an eye, he launches into a dead sprint straight for the infirmary. He rips the door wide open and yells, "Is everyone okay?" Inside, he stumbles into a grim tableau, men strewn and wounded, with Vice Commander Oriel among them, while a doctor stands watch as the commander drinks in the brutal sight of his injured knights. The doctor meets him in the infirmary and welcomes him back, while the commander's grim face snaps into action. Then he demands to hear how bad it really is. The doctor confirms that everyone's hurt, but no one died. He barrels up to his vice commander's bedside and spots Oriol awake, wrapped in bandages. Oriol even blurts out an apology for being seen like this. But Vandiers cuts him off, tells him to stay right where he is, and demands to know exactly what happened. Oriol starts laying it all out. After the commander walked away, he led his squad straight into the eastern forest, notorious for monster sightings, and the second they crossed the line, monsters slammed into them in numbers so huge they couldn't even believe what they were seeing. He slams his report shut and says they somehow pulled off the win, but the price is written all over their bodies. Vandiers stands there with arms crossed, staring hard, and admits his vice commander did nothing less than pull himself back alive. With a grim face, Oriol blurts that the monster's been acting weird lately. Vandiers slaps a steadying hand on his shoulder, tells him to take it easy, and vows he'll dig into it himself, and Oriol just nods quietly. Bursting out of the infirmary, the commander spots Florent, his administrative officer, waiting in the corridor. And before the words even leave his mouth, he snaps, "Send a messenger to the Margrave right now." He lays out exactly what the message says, voice iron-tight, demanding cooperation as he points to unmistakable signs that a monster stampede is about to explode. This hits him like a brick, because he's lived it before. A monster stampede once tore through the Margrave's domain, and it was ripped straight from Justin's own past. Back then, he'd strutted in with reckless pride, thinking the Third Night Order alone could crush it. Swollen with arrogance, he crashed headfirst into an unstoppable threat with too few men. And the wreckage was brutal, with Oriol going down among the first. Even after he finally choked the stampede into silence, the Third Night Order's name lay shattered, and then things got worse. An ugly subordinate of the hostile Crown Prince was slipped in as vice commander, moving in the shadows to squeeze the life out of Justin's hope. He strode with purpose, the sting of past failure weighing on his chest as it forged a hard new resolve. Because this exact moment was his turning point, and one wrong step would doom the future he couldn't stop running from. His journey brought him straight to a giant window, staring down at a peaceful town lit up by stars. Then he froze, eyes drifting, and slammed his knuckles hard against the wooden frame. A man with short, light hair and a crisp white cloak burst into the doorway, and the attendant shouted that Lord Clement, Knight Commander of the Margr's domain, had arrived. Inside a fancy room, Justin Devontier sits across from Lord Clement, the Knight Commander of the Margrave's domain, and with a tight, tense hand gesture, Justin starts thanking him for showing up. Clement snaps to his feet and cuts him off mid-sentence, silencing the pleasantries as he demands answers about the message Justin just got, reminding him he promised to prove sincerity with action. And then he explodes, furious, asking why they're suddenly saying a monster stampede is about to hit. Commander stays locked in his seat, face set like stone, and coolly tells Clement that only moments ago his men clashed with monsters in the eastern forest. Whole squad wiped out, forced to retreat. Then he snaps the spotlight back on Clement, asking if he's really about to waste his soldiers on this nonsense on purpose. The climate freezes in shock, blurting that even the elite Third Night Order got wiped out, and Justin keeps talking, saying the monsters are stalking in tight packs with way too much energy for normal. And sure, they might not like the humans, but they still recognize how dangerous they are. He refuses to back down, eyes locked on the dire news, and starts firing off questions. Are these really the signs of a monster stampede? Because in their lands, that kind of nightmare hasn't hit in over 100 years. Justin waves it off, scoffing at the "it hasn't happened in a century" argument, and fires back, saying today's luck means nothing tomorrow. Then he demands they start tearing into the city walls right now, inspecting and repairing them before disaster strikes. The Knight Commander roars in protest, demanding to know what responsibility Justin will shoulder if his predictions crash and burn. Yet Justin doesn't even flinch, telling him that they should instead regroup their defenses, coordinate with the Third Night Order, and then he punctuates it with one cold word. Responsibility. He explains that he's only laying out the absolute worst-case scenario from where things stand, and then he presses for the right countermeasures, just as he slips in a quiet warning. Any Margrave who actually knows history wouldn't ever make the mistake of underestimating a monster stampede. Clement grumbles, but he can't shake the logic. Justin leans in and hammers the point home, doing both things pays off for the domain no matter what happens. He adds that the city walls will need repairs sooner or later, and the soldiers deploying now counts as training, plain and simple. With that, he snaps up from his chair, saying he understands the point and will take it straight to the Lord himself. Then, right before he storms out, he sharply tells Justin not to go beyond his authority until he gets the Lord's answer. In a grand, echoing room, Justin Devontier sits alone, staring down the open hostility he just got hit with. Then he lets out a heavy sigh, because of course his crew will have to handle the coming crisis all by themselves. He heads straight to a makeshift infirmary, where his knights are finally recovering, and one of them jerks up, shocked by the commander's arrival. Justin stays cool, greets them calmly, and takes one look around like, "Good news, you're all right." He storms up to the doctor and demands the full report on the injured, right down to how many days they'll need to recover. And the doctor tells him most of the men will be back on their feet after just a few days of rest. The doctor cuts in, saying the worst injuries are a whole different beast and won't heal in just 7 days. Justin leans in, silent and tense, as his grim face confirms he's hearing every word. He swivels toward one of the bandaged knights, lays a calm hand on his shoulder, and tells them they fought hard and now they've earned some rest, handing the less wounded knights the job of watching over their subordinates. Justin then strides up to his vice commander, Oriel, who's propped up in bed, and asks how he's holding up. Oriel, bandages and all, insists his wounds were only shallow and that he's already totally fine. The vice commander admits he figured he'd get chewed out for his performance, and Justin's hand tightens into a fist as he bluntly says, "Yeah, he's furious." He drops into a seat and spills the real reason his rage won't quit, then tells Oriel he's been feeling something is off for ages, and now it's finally crystal clear. A monster stampede is coming, and it could hit within the next few days. Oriel bursts out laughing like he can't believe it, muttering that he never expected to live through a disaster worthy of legend, and Justin nods, saying it makes sense since monster stampedes only show up every few hundred years. Oriel then leans in and says the injured men get a full week to recover. That news snaps Justin into action. He tells a stunned Oriel that the mighty Third Night Order won't be optional anymore, not even for him, because Justin refuses to let him rest while the stakes are this brutal. He keeps rolling out the first battle plan, saying the scouts are already out in the nearby areas. Then he grabs his subordinate and orders him to read every report like it's life or death. Figure out where the monster is right now and guess what it'll do next. Because every move they make from here on out will rise or fall on that intel. The subordinate leans in and asks if the commander's got a smart plan up his sleeve, begging to be useful and swearing he'll do whatever it takes. Then a quiet, confident smile tugs at Justin's lips as he stares forward, and he says, "Yeah, get ready, things are about to get busy." Commander Justin Devendier stands before his men and lays it all out. He's just confirmed that the monster's weird new behavior isn't random at all. It's the warning flare before a full-on stampede, and one of the knights can't believe it, snapping back that maybe this kind of rampage is nothing more than an old folktale. He snaps his gaze to the gathered knights and fires off a straight question. Does anyone here know why monster rampages happen? He reveals the culprit, a cursed demonic stone called the fragment of the evil god, and it just keeps guzzling dark energy for a long time, until it finally hits saturation and unleashes everything it's stored in one explosive burst. A brutal burst of demonic energy detonates into the air, yanking monsters from the shadows, or even spawning brand new ones, until a colossal horde swarms together and smashes into a full-on, no-holds-barred rampage. He raises 2 fingers, laying out their choices. They can smash the root cause, the fragment, before the rampage kicks off, or they can keep battling monsters non-stop until the demonic energy runs dry, and then he turns to his vice commander and demands, "So what do you think, Arya?" The vice commander snaps back with grim certainty. "When the horde shows up, you fight. That's basically the only real play." Then he adds with a hard swallow that there are almost 0 documented cases of anyone ever managing to destroy a demonic stone. Justin nods and says the real nightmare is tracking the fragment down in the first place, because it looks like an ordinary stone until it starts quietly glowing with energy. A tiny shift most people miss, even saints or top clerics, unless they're paying close attention. It hammers home one brutal truth. If they let the rampage start, they're done, too late to stop it. The fallout would be so massive the Third Night Order can't contain it by itself, and even if the Margraves jump in, the damage to the domain would turn catastrophic. Knight demands their plan, and Justin snaps back that this isn't their kind of game. Demonic energy is already loose, but the rampage hasn't started yet, so he declares the target. Strike now and rip apart the demonic stone. His own men burst into amazement at how sharp the commander's instincts are. Justin explains the real trick was finding the exact spot. He guessed it was a temple ruined deep in the eastern forest, sent scouts to check, and they came back confirming monsters were piling up there. Then the video cuts to one scout's fate, down and unmoving, right beside those ominous ruins. He smirks and shoots it down hard, muttering that stories always end the same way. The saint always stumbles onto the demonic stone. His words light a fire under his men. So when Cassius, the curly-haired knight, vows that whoever shatters the stone will be remembered as a hero for all time, he throws his hand up immediately, and the commander, seeing that hunger, grants his wish. Then he hands the job, find the demonic stone and smash it, straight to his own unit and to Elliot's crew. One soldier grins and says, "Elliot's been leveling up lately," and another backs him up. "Sure, we've only got 2 squires, but their skills are rock solid and they can handle this." That news hits like a victory punch. People are basically fist-bumping the air in celebration. Plan in place, he grins and says Cassius showing up will turn everything into chaos. Then he waves them off, swears he's going straight to the Margrave, and leaves his men staring at his words like they're about to explode. He steps before the gathered knights, drops his final command for the whole operation, sends them to Aller for their exact instructions, orders them to gear up and deploy, then tells them to hold steady, and the men answer with a thunderous roar. Moments later, he bursts into an ornate office, and Margrave Talleyrand blurts out an apology for the sudden summons, only for the commander to wave it off, saying it's nothing at all, since he has news of his own to report. The Margrave wastes no time. He lunges straight into the question. Is this about that monster rampage coming? He nods back and confirms they've spotted clear warning signs that leave no room for doubt. The Margrave stares out the window, jaw tight and eyes grim, cursing that a disaster like this would strike in his lifetime, and admitting his own talks are about the very same catastrophe. Then he slams his verdict down. He can't spare a single troop. He breaks it down, saying sure, he'll cooperate in an emergency, but a tiny boost won't be enough to stop the threat. And as the commander hears him, doubt flickers in his eyes like, am I still not trusted? He sinks into the Margrave's words, murmuring that he gets it, then declares the rampage has to be cut off at the source, before he leans in and asks the Margrave straight up if he feels the same. He shoved past the Margrave's refusal by dropping a bombshell of intel. He already tracked down where the demonic stone is likely hidden, and the moment he spoke, the Margrave and Talleyrand visibly flinched. The Margrave's mind was sprinting, one thought slamming into the next. Before his family even took the reins, this land had already been wrecked by monster rampages, over and over and over again. His face tightened with pure resolve as he weighed the consequences. If that evil god's fragment could finally be shattered, he'd grant a hope his people had cherished for years. Commander de Vandiers kept going, warning that demonic energy was luring monsters in waves to that spot. But the chance still exists to hit them hard with a tiny elite crew. Then Lord Clement cut in, pressing Lord de Vandiers for a real, solid plan. He laid out his plan. He'd personally lead a suicide squad to smash through the enemy lines, handing the rear guard to Vice Commander Oriol de Larmina, and the Margrave couldn't believe the commander himself was actually going to show up at the front. Seeing that commitment up close, the Margrave shot his hand forward, swore that right now nobody could be trusted more than the Third Knight Order, and demanded de Vandiers cooperation, only for de Vandiers to stall and say, "We don't even know what the real stone is yet, so I can't just promise we'll succeed." Even with every warning in the air, he clenched Margrave's hand tight and swore he'd give it everything. Boom, their alliance was sealed. After sealing the deal, Lord Clement stepped in and made it official. Just like Lord Vandier urged, they poured every last ounce of effort into one mission, checking the city walls, repairing every flaw, and standing guard until nothing could break through. With monsters popping up more and more, the Vandiers nodded. This was the smartest move. Then Lord Clement stared him down and said, straight to his face, that he didn't trust him, not yet. He shoved the commander with a challenge. Prove your change of heart isn't just talk, back it up with results. A smirk sparked across the Vander's face as he grabbed this brutal new expectation, and he realized he'd better start meeting Lord Clement's standards too. He declared he still had preparations to handle, and that he was leaving now. Then turned away, and Margrave Talleyrand's eyes tracked him like a hawk, doubt clawing at his mind as he wondered if he could really trust that man. Beside him, Lord Clement stayed quiet, but the skepticism on his face said it all. Commander Justin Devandier barrels into the compound and demands Oriol on the spot, and they point him straight to the war room, because the vice commander is inside, right now. Justin burst into the room to find Oriol, and she immediately grilled him about how the meeting went. He snapped back that the answer was solid, and now they're stepping in to take over urban security. The vice commander, straight up admitting there was no way they could have pulled it off alone, talks about size and relief. Then Justin leans in, asking about the squad, and Oriol confirms the men are already double-checking their gear. He points out that high morale matters, because when spirits crash, nothing moves. Then he locks it in and demands the latest update on what's going on right now. An editorial report bursts in. The scouts who stayed behind have just come back, and they swore they found nearly 50 monsters lurking around the ruins. Animal, plant, ogre, and even giant birds. He keeps talking, saying sure, more monsters was expected. But the demonic stone really is buried in those ruins, so they can't just rush in. They have to clear the surrounding area first. Justin cuts in fast, claiming he's got a small plan. Justin pauses, then slaps the table and nods. We're doing this. He points out the barracks inventory is running dry, so he orders Oriel to get more, and Oriel immediately jumps on it. Just then the head chef bursts in and asks if the commander is here. Justin whips around and shoots. What's wrong? The chef hurries over, says the rations are ready, and demands the commander get his magic bag ready. Justin tells the chef he'll be there in a sec, then whips around to Oriol and blurts out an apology. He has to step out for a moment. Oriol shrugs and waves him on like, go on, just as the commander rises to take the lead. Mission time hits. Rations are set out. A huge tray of sausages crackles and sizzles, and a steaming pot of stew sits ready to fuel the run. In the kitchens, the head chef hustles in with fresh rations and hands them to Commander Justin DeVendier and Vice Commander Oriol, explaining he's heard the commander's magic bag comes with a time delay effect. So the food should stay hot, though he warns them to warm it up if it starts to cool. He keeps rattling off the menu, sandwiches, soups, and a bunch of grilled goodies, while Justin praises the chef for pulling it off on such short notice, and the chef just shrugs, says they've got around 120 servings, and asks, is that enough? The chef calls out to his commander, and he nods like he's already clocked the plan. Justin even bets he'll be back before the last bite's gone, so the leftovers can fuel the victory celebration. Oriol's face tightens with worry as he leans to his commander and tells Justin, your power is a national treasure. Don't waste it. And remember, every person in that kitchen is fighting for us too, just in their own way. Feeling the emotion hit him, Justin turns to the staff with fresh fire, orders them to get ready for the victory celebration, and tells everyone to wait for the night to bring everyone back safe. While the chef, choked up, blurts out his heartfelt thanks. The mood snaps like a switch. Then a sharp, predatory grin crawls onto his face as he quietly confirms he's actually excited for it, and the chronicler's note makes it clear. There's not a drop of malice in Justin. Outside, a massive garrison roars with energy as Commander Justin Devontier stands before his knights, demanding updates. Supplies loaded, support unit ready. When every voice confirms they're set, he exhales, shifts into battle mode, and scrutinizes the plan one last time. They'll call the whole company together, lay out the mission, then ride in a carriage to the eastern forest, march into the ruins on foot, smash the demonic stone everyone fears, and wipe out every monster that dares to block their path. Alexander's voice spikes with raw intensity. He tells them flat out there's no promise anyone walks back alive from this mission, and he gives every last one of them a chance to step away right now, no charges attached, before he demands, straight to their faces, what they're choosing. He shuts his eyes, swallowing their silent, unanimous resolve like it's fuel, and the knights behind him don't hesitate for a second, their faces set between unshakable confidence and hard, grim determination. His fist clamps tight as he hammers home the mission's terrifying stakes. The Margrave's land is hemmed in by forests on 3 sides, and if they mess up, the town gets swallowed fast by monsters. His eyes blaze with pure conviction as he roars out his last orders. Go find that fragment of the evil god and tear it out for good. He slams the message through everyone. Raise your spirits, because the fight ahead is coming fast. With a thunderous cheer, the knights thrust their fists skyward, their courage spiking in an instant. Then the commander gives the official order and the operation finally kicks off. Under the cover of night, Justin and Oriol climb into horse-drawn carriages. Then the whole convoy lurches forward, leaving the town behind as they roll straight into the wilderness. As the carriages rattle forward, armed knights are hauled deeper into the wild, forested heart of the land. The expedition's first test is already behind them. Right in a clearing, those huge wolf-like bees lie cut down where they stand, and Commander Justin looms over the carnage with his sword bared, pointing ahead as he shouts for his men to charge forward. His push hurled the third knight's line right up to the edge of the clearing, and in that dim light, their silhouettes looked razor-sharp. One of the men finally blurted the question burning in every mind. Is that it? Ahead of them loomed a brutal line of monsters. An enormous horned ogre braced at the front, a massive bear beside him, and a snarling wolf snapping at the air, while a hawk-like bird circled overhead like a hunter waiting to pounce. These were the sentinels guarding the ruins. The commander watched the whole scene and figured out the low-ranking monsters couldn't slip inside at all. Then he muttered that even if everyone forgot it and it rotted away, this place was still a temple, still holding on to a little sacred power. Justin told his vice commander, "So monsters only spill out through the ruins entrance, and if you think they won't be brutal opponents, you're kidding yourself." With eyes set like steel, he then declared, "The real fight starts after we drop these guards." He snapped an order, "Finish it fast, then they'd finally get their meal and a well-earned break." Now that the plan was locked in, he slammed down the final order. Then the knights snapped taut, ready to explode into the charge. High above, a pack of enormous hawk-like beasts dive out of the sky and crash onto a hidden structure deep in the dense forest, unleashing a brutal, instant assault. In the middle of the growing disaster, a gloved fist crashes onto the table with absolute, unwavering force. Counterattack is swift. One of the flying beasts gets hit dead on, and it shatters into a screaming burst of feathers. Down below, the knight throws his crossbow up in victory, yelling that he nailed it as the fallen creatures crash toward the ground. In a strategy room, Officer Aller studies the map and lays out the grim fight ahead. Sure, flame and explosion enchantments can wipe enemies out fast, but they also risk igniting the forest and summoning even more monsters with the blast, while the flying monsters are the real nightmare, because heavy weapons like ballistas and catapults can't be hauled through that brutal terrain. Justin pitches the plan to Commander Justin de Vendier, using range and penetration arrows powered up with wind enchantment. And Justin nods along like, "Yeah, this could work," until he points out the brutal problem. Their wind supply is low, the attribute magic stones cost a fortune, and the whole thing will drain them. Then Aller grins, all confidence, saying if an emergency hits, His Excellency the Margrave will happily pay for it. Justin smirks right back, impressed by just how good Aller's attitude actually is. Then the scene explodes into a brutal fight in the woods. Monsters flood in, and a massive magic bear leads the charge at the knights. Commander Justin scouts barks orders for the support unit to wipe out everything around them while the main force focuses on the biggest threats. And he makes it clear, his own squad must smash that magic bear first. With his sword already out, he keeps barking orders and drives the Elliot squad to shut down the crush of monsters charging in. Then he announces he'll take on an even bigger beast himself, whipping his men into full battle mode. 2 nights later, Arno and Simon slip away to face the magic bear head-on. Arno even calls his shot, saying he'll make the first move to bring it down for good. Simon fires him up, and Arno rockets into the air, then slams his sword down with a brutal, earth-shaking strike. His blade slammed into the bear's hide with a brutal clang, but it wouldn't bite. Its armor was too damn tough. The shock rocked his arms, and the hit hurled him backward, dazed by how insanely hard that beast was. When the attack fizzles out, Commander Justin snaps into action, instantly clocking that this thing isn't normal, it's a variant. He roars new tactics at his men. If they can't slice it, they stab for the joints. Then he points Gasper to its side and orders Marius behind it, coordinating the whole strike like a clockwork trap. Down on the ground, the Knights of the Third Order are getting slammed in a brutal fight against a raging magic bear. Standing tall on its hind legs, its armored hide shrugging off their first hits while the knights keep circling, tense and cautious. With a sudden lunge, the soldier drove his sword into the beast's arm. Clang. Only for the blade to bounce and fail to break through its hide, and the bear snapped into a furious roar, jaw gaping wide as it charged with raw aggression. With every thunderous bellow, the hooded knight at the front drills his squad with fierce focus, eyes narrowing as he studies the creature's every move and realizes their straight-up attacks aren't landing. He spots the opening and barks an order to his subordinate, Marius, trip the beast, and from far away, Marius snaps back that he's got it. He drops low on the command and hammers a brutal kick into the bear's back leg, snapping the giant off balance in one savage hit. The hooded knight smirks like he's won, watching the beast stumble, eyes blown wide in pure shock, and he just chuckles to himself. Now, how about that? The bear lunges forward, jaws gaping. The knight crashes down and he seizes the one opening he knows. That tough, protective fur can't grow inside its mouth. He drives his sword deep into the exposed flesh with. At last, the creature goes down. Then 2 knights loom over its corpse, breathing hard. One slaps praise onto his comrade for the flawless kill, while the other lets out a relieved finally, like a weight just lifted. 1 down. Just as they think they can finally breathe, that fragile piece shatters. Some of the men grumble about the sticky gore on their hands, and their hooded leader snaps at them hard, screaming that they better stay sharp, because the monsters are still all around them. Then he thrusts his sword toward the next skirmish, barking orders to rally his men, declaring that Elliot's squad is getting shoved back, and they're rushing in to reinforce them right now. Out in the distance, more wolf-like beasts come into view, and it's clear this fight is far from over. A faint smile flickered across the commander's lips as he leaned in and praised one of his men, Arnaud, for his razor-sharp judgment. He planted one foot on the giant, fallen beast sword lounging in his grip, then tore into his knights. Say you want credit, earn it. And if they didn't move fast, he'd steamroll the whole problem himself. Those cutting words sent a cold, nervous sweat pouring down Arnaud's spine, and all he could do was force out a shaky laugh. Meanwhile, the other knights didn't even blink. One just muttered to himself that this was exactly the crushing strength and demanding edge they'd been expecting from their commander. In front of ancient columned ruins, a band of knights huddles up, sizing up the mess. One of them snaps, "Are we good, or do we march back out and chase that fragment of the evil god?" Commander Justin Devontier shuts the plan down and calls for a quick break. He orders his men to tear through their gear, swap out anything that's off, and when his subordinate gets it, the message lands. With the word deploy in the air, he raises a device in his hand, and a blinding flash erupts as Justin watches in shock. When the deployment finally unfolds, there's food everywhere, and the knights burst with joy. Justin yells for them to dive in and grab a quick bite before the chance disappears. Then he whips his focus to the huge, fallen creature's carcass, eyes gleaming as he decides to deep-fry the rock meat, swapping soy sauce for salt-fried chicken and weighing the idea of stuffing it straight into his magic bag. While Justin was mulling over the meal, a knight stepped in and reported that they'd found zero sign of any demonic stones nearby. And Justin, arms crossed, snapped that this was exactly what he'd expected all along. Justin slams down fresh orders. Justin's squad and the Elliot squad are going into the ruins, while the support unit stays put and holds the line until they're back. Then he delivers a cold warning. If the support unit gets hit, nobody's coming to rescue them. They'll have to fight it out on their own. A Borodite snorts that the commander blurts out reckless stuff, but he still follows the orders, while Justin leans in with full confidence, saying he trained them well enough to take it in stride, then spins through his troops and fires the question, "You ready?" After his meal, one knight practically buzzes with energy and shouts that he's fueled up and ready to go. The others erupt in cheers, itching to smash the mission and get to the feast their commander cooked up. And then Justin's grin flashes wide as he barks the order. Move out. Obeying his command, the knights storm upward, climbing a long, pitch-dark stone staircase, their silhouettes cutting through the blinding glow pouring out of the ruins' entrance ahead. Commander Justin Evandier steps into the crushing darkness of the ruins, raises his sword, and barks one command, light, until the blade burns bright. One of his men whispers that the gloom is worse than expected and calls for torches, but the commander snaps it down, warning they'd be a danger the moment a fight erupts. Instead, he boldly announces he'll charm everyone's gear with that same glowing light, and tells them all to line up. One of the knights murmurs his approval too, saying it's just convenient magic for getting everyone moving together. As they press on, that enchanted glow tears across the ruins, revealing once majestic halls now rotting away. Dust swirling around silent stone statues and broken archways, like the echoes of a forgotten age, are still trapped here. As the small party pushes deeper, their silhouettes claw across the stone walls in eerie, stretching shadows. The commander stops dead and his eyes slice into the darkness. Something is pushing out of that pitch-black corridor ahead. I can't feel a thing, but he mutters like he already knows the truth. It's this way. Trusting his gut, the crew arrives fast and slams into a colossal, sealed door, ornate carvings crawling over it like it's guarding something huge inside. Right as they're about to crack it open, he shoots up a hand, stopping everyone in their tracks. One of the knights leans in and goes, "Wait, that could be a chapel." He can't help but grin at the idea because it's the perfect spot for their target to be hiding. A low growl rolls out from beyond that door, proving they're right, something wicked is close. The commander snaps that the shard of the evil god is even deeper, but they've got to smash the monsters guarding the way first. A knight fires up a plan. The commander should blast himself with enhancement magic, kick in fast, and let the others mop up the weaker beasts. Justin shuts it down on the spot, saying he'll leave the job of destroying that fragment to Cassius, only to watch Cassius recoil in pure shock. He lays it all out, spelling out the ceiling of his own magic, then goes, "We need a fast, enhancement-driven breakthrough, and that's Cassius." The commander nods, calling him the quickest and most nimble on the team, tough enough to handle the fight, and light as a shadow so he can move like pure momentum. A cocky smirk bursts across Cassius, face the moment he accepts the responsibility, while his comrades lock in, eyes blazing with anticipation, because their commander just handed him his very first major mission. Commander Justin Devendier slaps a steady hand on his knight Cassius's shoulder, sparks body enhancement in Kashu's spell, and then barks a no-nonsense command. Just follow me. The effect hits like lightning. Cassius suddenly feels weightless, a bright glowing aura blazing around him as he can't stop marveling at the insane sensation. Right in front of that massive sealed door, Justin lays it all out and explains the catch. The moment they open it, the monsters inside will snap to attention. Then he turns to Cassius. His job is to draw their fire and, if he can, track down where the demonic stone is hiding. Once it's destroyed, the rest of the knights crash in and wipe out whatever's left. His eyes sharpen with total focus as he starts a silent countdown. 3, 2, 1. Doors blasted open, and Justin snapped his sword out, then unleashed a sweeping arc of energy that cleared the doorway in a flash of pure light. Inside, the knights stumble into monstrous silhouettes, and Justin blurts at them in panic. Find a fragment of the evil god, right now. Yug spots a shadowy, skeletal monster in the dark, staring like it's ready to strike, and asks if that's their real target. Justin nods, hypes up his sharp eyes, then orders Cassius forward, where a huge, dark, wolf-like guardian blocks the way just before the spectral creature. Great Beast rips the silence with a thunderous roar that crashes through the huge hall, and Justin shouts for the other knights to guard themselves and back Cassius as he charges forward. Suddenly, a dagger whips through the air and buries itself deep in the side of the wolf's head. That sudden, crushing hit slams the massive creature onto the stone floor, stunning it cold and knocking it out. Inside the monster-infested building, Simon, one of the knights, drives his comrade forward, shouting at Cassius to hurry. Cassius snaps back his thanks and pushes on with fresh courage. Reaching the pedestal, Cassius grips the demonic stone in one hand, and with a determined roar, he hoists his sword high, pouring every last ounce of power into one brutal goal: shatter that artifact. The sword slams into the stone, but it only bites off little chips. Still no shatter, no break. So he jerks back, stunned by how solid it is, then clenches his teeth and snaps back into stance for one more strike. As he strains against the stone, a hulking shadow crashes down over him. Right behind that distracted knight stands a gigantic, bull-headed monster, axe raised and ready, while Commander Justin Evandier nearby watches with a hard, focused grimness. The Minotaur rips the air with a guttural roar while Cassius hammers the stone, desperate to crack it before it's too late. And the commander sees Doom charging in, screams at him to stop, and orders him to run. Throwing the order aside, he swings his sword down with everything he's got, right one last time. Crack! A thunderous blow rings out as the demonic stone finally collapses, and triumphant relief hits his face in a flash. Right as he's about to celebrate, the Minotaur's rage erupts. Its massive axe hammers down in a deadly swing straight for the knife's exposed edge. Right before the axe can land, Commander Devendier explodes into the gap, diving between a monster and his subordinate, and throws his own body in the way as he bellows, forcing the beast to back off. With the Third Order's knight looming, he stands before a towering Minotaur, sword raised like a trophy, then lets out a roaring shout of pure victory, claiming he's just shattered the evil god's fragment, while the stone structure behind him groans, cracks, and collapses from the impact of his blow. Far inside that massive, vaulted hall, a thunderous voice barks one command: "Stop, I can't see." The order comes from Justin Devendier, and fury twists his face into a clenched mask. Then memories crash in at full speed. Naoki's family shouting for their big brother, his own knights screaming his name, a lone figure beside a car, and that shadowy knight staring down the beast. Rage clenches into a desperate, protective scream for his little brother, and he hurls his poleaxe tight as he roars a command to the Minotaur about the knight's hands. Then he lunges ahead like a comet, roaring at the beast as he whips that massive weapon in a deadly arc, slashing the air, not the monster. Charges snap through the air, then other threats burst into the fight. Two hooded assailants swing their swords in, while a goblin-like creature and a monstrous wolf brace to tear in. Even the Minotaur jolts, looking up in full-on shock at the sudden, brutal interruption. From their perch on a high balcony, the commander and the young knight hang in silhouette against the grand hall's windows. Then a devastating attack tears through the air like lightning. The unseen strike slams into the Minotaur's head and obliterates its skull with a brutal, bone-rattling impact. The beast's mouth gapes wide in a final, crushing scream. Then everything goes deathly silent. But that strike wasn't for the Minotaur, it was for control. Commander Justin freezes in breathless shock, his armored gauntlet slick with fresh blood. Right beneath him, the polished floor shows the headless body of the triumphant knight. His life didn't get cut down by some monster. It got ended by the very commander who should have protected him. On the cobblestone street below, the two hooded assailants snapped still, their eyes dragging upward. One of them looked up, and his pupils blew wide with pure alarm at what was unfolding above. His face twisted with total disbelief as he stammered out one horrified word: "Seek a commander." Commander Justin Devontier scanned the scene with a razor-cold, triumphant grin. He'd made it just in time, and this time would be different. His gauntlet clenched tight as he swore that one clean strike would crush the danger in front of him and finally silence the trauma he carried. Then he spoke, voice steady but unsettling. "Well done, Cassius." Two chunks of a cracked rock sit shattered on the stone floor, and then, boom, shouting cuts through the air. The evil god's fragment is gone, and the win is credited to Cassius, the night-spirited hero. The fragment's gone, but the monsters it yanked into this world haven't disappeared. Now wolves and goblin-like creatures slump on the cobblestones, shaking like leaves as terror grips them for the nights. Seeing terror hit the crowd, Commander Justin Devontier stood unshaken in the grand hall, his weapon flashing in the light. Then he snapped into action, shouting that this is their opening to strike and overwhelm the enemy. The moment they're called, the knights explode forward. An officer screams, rallying everyone for one last charge, begging them to wipe out the enemy right in front of them. Then, with one thunderous cry, they slam down the long staircase. Once the battle finally died down, the surviving knights swept the battlefield, scanning every corner while the monster's fury faded for good. And one relieved soldier even said the assault's scale was something they could handle without help. Even after everything goes right, one of the knights can't shake the worry. He stares off into the distance and asks if the commander and the others will make it back safe, since far too much time has slipped by. His companion leans in and tries to calm him down, insisting the commander and the elite Third Knight Order will come through. Another knight just prays they'll return soon, but a cynical soldier snaps that if this fails, everybody's dead, until a fellow knight jabs him with a brutal reprimand and orders him to stay locked on his job, defending the entrance. Commander Justin finally shows up, exhausted as hell, but somehow still victorious. And as his men shout his name, he admits he's wiped out, then confirms the terrifying fragment of the evil god is nothing to fear because the others are safe too. He swings his gauntlet open and shows the two dead, useless chunks of the fragment. Then he says it's nothing but a plain stone now, stripped of every last drop of demonic energy. Cassius snaps, asking what they should do next, and the commander shuts it down. Just their report isn't proof on its own. They'll need a top-ranking cleric to dig in and back it up with facts. Then the commander locks eyes with Cassius and says, "Forget that. What we really need is to talk." He starts chewing out his knight, Cassius, for charging in recklessly, and the commander snaps that Cassius should have stepped out of position to regroup. Because even if it came straight from a command, his life mattered more. The knight snaps a gloved hand over his mouth, and a little laugh slips out. Then he starts explaining that if it were the commander from moments ago, he might have done the same, but this time, it's different. He tipped his chin up with total confidence, swearing the current commander would handle this mess somehow, even if the odds were stacked against them. The moment that declaration hits, everything erupts. Out of nowhere, the commander lunges and clamps his hand around Cassius' head, yanking it tight as the knight gasps in shock. Keeping him steady, the commander snaps at him not to sound so grown, then admits he couldn't just ditch him. And with a small smile, he apologizes for dragging Cassius into a situation that left him no choice but to go reckless. Then the focus snaps right back to the knights gathered outside the temple. One of the commanders steps up and confirms everything inside is safe, with no enemy reinforcements lurking nearby, and the moment he hears it, the commander slams the operation shut for good. A sly grin crawls across his face as he watches his men crack under the strain. Mission done. It's lunch time, and he yells it loud. When the view opens up, they spot a nearby building with a roof caved in like it got wrecked. After a long, hungry night, a warm welcome hits. Baskets piled high with fresh, crispy croquettes and thick slices of bread. A simple meal that still feels like a feast. An officer's voice slices through the chatter. Has everyone washed their hands? And all the men answer in unison, yes. With all the formalities out of the way, he snaps out an enthusiastic order. Eat. And in the next heartbeat, everyone's hands dive for the food and drinks. Men didn't need a second invitation. They dug into their meal with pure gusto, practically cheering over their fresh win. Commander Justin Devontier can't even savor it. He's got his hands tight on the dark piece of the demon's stone, staring into it like it'll buy him trust from the Margraves. But deep down he knows the nobles in the royal capital will still see him as the same brutal, evil Justin. He started sweating over the cleric sent to investigate the evil god's fragment. Because if that guy decided he didn't like him, they could slap a fake label on the stone and call the whole thing a staged stunt for fame. And worst of all, he might even get blamed for inciting a riot. Dark Reverie gets wrecked when one of his knights bursts in screaming, demanding to know why his commander is staring with that terrifying look. The oyster's ready to chow down on everything at night, and another guy cracks that Justin's scary face is just how he always looks. Off to the side, Justin keeps it quiet. Now that the whole mess is safely handled, wouldn't it be nice if his men could just celebrate? Even with the gentle teasing flying around, the knights keep eating, like nothing can throw off the mood. Justin's right in the middle, fully in the group, yet his mind's somewhere else, soaking in quiet thoughts while everyone else laughs and bonds. That simple act of sharing a meal lights a memory, fast, and the whole scene whisks us back to the past, where a bunch of young boys, including a kid who looks just like Naoki Mayo, sit on a wooden floor while an adult hands out bottled drinks. Memories crumble and the focus slides elsewhere, where Simon, one of the Third Knight's Order, stares into the distance with a calm, unreadable face. Paced through the grass, deciding to shove his thoughts aside for now. His companion. One more night passes and she spots his mood, then mocks him, so Simon snaps back that she never stops with the unnecessary remarks. Far from their post, the grand royal capital of the Kingdom of Raphael looms, an enormous coastal city packed with life, dominated by a huge castle perched above it all like a warning sign. Footsteps thunder through its grand halls, pounding across a gleaming floor as if the place itself is alive. A lone, hooded figure creeps down the Nate corridor, pushing straight toward a blazing room at the far end. Diane de Tollerand finally steps out of the shadows, right into a lavish chamber, where she's facing Lord Ernest, the man sitting at a desk. He clocks that she looks rough and asks what's eating her, then tells her the truth. A letter from her father says monsters are flooding the Talleyrand territory. He tells her to stop worrying and reveals he's already sent a night order to take her enemies down. Diane thanks him, but you can still hear a little doubt hiding in her voice. She listens as Lord Ernest reveals the man he sent, Justin de Vendier, the Third Night Order commander. And the moment his name lands, worry flickers across her face as she wonders how he'll treat her father and the villagers. In a dim book-lined room, Naoki Mayo sits alone at a long table, a lone candle sputtering beside him while a grandfather clock ticks like a drumbeat, time crawling forward as he waits with his hands clasped tight. The door explodes open, and Vice Commander Oriel lunges inside with both hands gripping the frame, shouting that the subjugation force has come back. After that announcement, the returning knights burst into the courtyard on a huge wooden cart, and the crowd erupts in cheers as they roll in. "Welcome back. Great work." The onlookers shout. One knight perched high on their supplies throws his fist up and declares, "I'm wiped out, I'm exhausted." The knights rush to tell Commander Justin Evandier how relieved they are that he's unhurt, like he's somehow still full of energy. Yet Justin shuts down the compliments fast, saying the whole thing was way too dangerous. He orders everyone to rest, but tells Naoki they've got to track down the Margrave first. Then Justin swings around to Florent, the administrative officer, and snaps that he needs to set up a victory celebration fast, with the high priest sitting with them up front at the head table. Florent freezes for a second, then steadies himself and agrees right away. As they stride on, Naoki tells the commander to finally get some rest until the reply shows up, and Justin nods along, saying he should at least change his clothes first. Not long after, they'll reach that grand, multi-story mansion, when a voice bursts from inside and shouts that Lord Von Gier has arrived. Inside, Margrave Tollerand welcomes them with open warmth, saying he's already gotten the messenger's report about the suppression, and he sincerely thanks Justin for everything he did. Justin shakes his head and admits they only pulled it off because they had backup from a Margrave's domain. Later, tucked into a formal room, the Margrave calls in the high priest he'd demanded, and he grills him straight away about the urgent issue they'd been circling earlier. The high priest lays everything out. Once the monster source is wiped out, a dangerous fragment is hauled back, a shattered, glowing stone. He holds it up and says it looks like a shard of the evil god pulled from the Talleyrand domain. Then he turns to Justin and demands the verdict, calling on his divine eye to appraise it. I watched the high priest stare at the shard, and his face went hard with dread. He said the lingering demonic energy was unlike anything he'd ever seen, and it shook him to the core. Then he demanded to know if it was safe right now, and Margrave Talleyrand replied that not a single abnormality popped up during its transport. The priest pressed for the object to be purified, and the Margrave weighed it all while silently rolling the word over and over in his head. Justin cut in fast, calling out why the Margraves hesitated, explaining that wiping this demonic evil clean would take prayers from a whole army of top priests, and that meant one huge donation to the Grand Cathedral. He crunched the numbers and knew this would wreck the government's finances, especially if a demonic stampede hit at the same time. So once he decided, he spun toward the Margrave and fired off a daring request. Hand him the shard of the evil god. He broke it all down. Stopping the stampede was a wild win. But the shard itself was an artifact so rare it carried centuries of history, and he wanted it in his hands because it would be the key proof he needed for his report to the king. He snapped his focus to the high priest and declared that the shard would be sent straight to the Grand Cathedral in the capital. Then flashed a knowing grin and promised to personally tell them how deeply that priest was tangled in the whole affair, drawing a quiet, intrigued chuckle from the clergyman. The high priest agreed without hesitation, and Justin thanked him on the spot. Then Margrave Talleyrand stepped in, reminding the priest it was nothing more than his job. A sly smirk tugged at his lips as everything slid into place. So clean, so perfect. The Grand Cathedral couldn't purify that shard by itself, which meant they'd get slammed with a financial deficit, and he could finally leverage it to climb higher in favor with both the royal family and the church. When the meeting finally wrapped up, the attendant was sent scrambling to a back room to draft a certificate, while the high priest was escorted out and handed a token of thanks for his time, something he accepted with genuine gratitude. Alone with the Margrave, Justin hung on every word as the older man finally cracked and offered a tired, heartfelt apology. So Talleyrand laid it out. The king had handed this land to his family, and he couldn't let them drown in the brutal cost of purification. Justin just cut in, telling him to stop circling the point and say it straight. He stared at Margrave Talleyrand as questions burned behind his eyes, demanding to know what could have twisted him so completely. Because this man used to be the Margrave, and now he suddenly switched gears, offering to take custody of any letters Justin wanted to send straight to the king or to his own daughter. Justin just grinned at his offer, like the water and air of this place were feeding him goodness, then stared the Margrave down with sharp intent. His words practically dared him to explain this sudden trust. He swallowed the Margrave's verdict and moved on. Talleyrand said future patrols and security would fall under the Justin soldiers, so the third knights could finally lay down and rest, and Justin nodded right away, saying it would be a huge help and his men would gladly step in. Inside that grand estate, Commander Justin Von Deer is in the kitchen, grinning while he flips a pancake like it's nothing, until Naoki Mayo and a young boy step in and Naoki asks what he's up to. Justin cheerfully says he's cooking a souvenir for someone he's about to meet, and Naoki's jaw drops, because Justin's happy face is wildly out of character. That shock makes Justin wonder if his smile is really that weird. Two boys stare, aching with want, and the younger one blurts that, yeah, they want pancakes, drenched in honey, no less, while Justin weighs their craving like it matters. He laid out his plan, then announced that the next day, at the final joint training with the Margrave's knights, whoever crushed the mock battles would get a special prize. Hearing that, two knights snap into stunned silence, their faces tightening as razor-sharp focus locks in. Competitive fire sparks across the ranks as the other knights harden their faces, lock their eyes forward, and press on with fresh, ruthless determination. Next day, Margrave Talleyrand stands beside Commander Justin and eyes the soldiers, shaking nerves, saying the air feels way too tense. Justin nods and admits why. He ordered them to hit him with everything they've got, even straight up aiming to kill. The instructor steps up to the gathered knights and yells that the one-on-one mock battles are starting now, warning them not to drop their guard just because the swords are wooden. Then he demands they go all out. The knights explode into roaring agreement, but Naoki only watches, grim as stone, because he knows this training could still decide who lives and who doesn't. In the training yard, Naoki squares up against his very first opponent, one of the knights who'd reacted to the commander's challenge like the words lit them on fire. When the instructor roars for the match to start, Naoki launches forward like a rocket, and his opponent can only stare and gasp at the insane speed. She snaps aside the first thrust, and before her guard can settle, Naoki drives forward, smashing his wooden sword down with a thunderous overhead blow that her opponent can barely block, and the blades crash together with a violent shock. He drops to his knees as the final blow rips his wooden sword from his grip. His opponent, a knight from a Margrave's own domain, stands over him victorious, and the mock battle ends. Just as the victory is announced, Vice Commander Oriol locks onto the scene with a hard, grim stare, then snaps that the opponent's earlier moves and training were nothing but routine, not the real thing. And in that moment, he finally understands. This is the third Knight's Order in full, serious form. His commander, Justin Devontier, locks in with a razor-sharp stare, and right there he spots the real fighting spirit burning in their eyes. Then he can't help but wonder how far that kind of grit could be stretched with a simple promise of pancakes. The rewards whisper ricochets through the ranks, so loud it feels like it's inside everyone's chest. A knight clenches his practice sword's hilt until his knuckles turn white, shaking with pure anticipation. This fear drives them forward like wildfire, and a whole line of knights stands ready, eyes locked in one unshaking promise of what's coming. Watching this unfold, Commander Justin smirks, just a little. Then his grin snaps into something fiercer, pure, blazing pride. He feels the weight of his men's eyes on him and realizes what they're really fighting for goes way beyond surviving monster rampages. He decides he'll finally give the soldiers he leads the respect they've earned. Right beside him, Oriole lets out a quiet chuckle. From afar, Margrave Tolerand seethes and watches, cursing that his own men are getting lured by nothing but food. Like they should have grabbed lodging already, not stood there salivating and getting sidetracked. He calls them greedy and demands they carry themselves with real dignity. But he can't just wave it off with a bitter laugh, because he knows his subordinates aren't playing around for fun. The man standing there, Justin Devontier of the Third Knight's Order, is impossible to read. The Margrave can't stop thinking about his messy bond with the commander, because Justin, if he's an ally, will stand like a rock, and if he's an enemy, he'll be pure nightmare fuel. Talleyrand is stuck asking himself which one Justin really is. Back in the training hall, that tiny moment of peace vanishes. An authority-filled shout cuts through the air, demanding the next two fighters step up, hungry to clash, driven by fighting spirit. Several days later, in the Margrave's main courtyard, the Third Knight tightens their last preparations to leave. Carriages lined up like waiting thunder while soldiers bustle around, and a voice pours out heartfelt thanks for every bit of help they've been given. Commander Justin Devontier, ready to ride out, mounted his horse and talked with Naoki. Then the young cook admitted he was crushed to see them leave, because he'd loved their cooking chats and only wished he could have taught the commander even more recipes. With a smug grin, the commander lays out his plan, telling Naoki that the day he's officially knighted and buys a mansion, he'll ride in himself to recruit him. Naoki's eyes flare wide, and determination snaps into place as he practically snatches up the offer. Once their farewells finally wrapped up, Justin snaps his focus to his man, delivers one last address, then roars the command for the whole company to hit the road. With respect on the line, Naoki and the rest of the kitchen crew bared their skill in a fierce bow as the knights finally swept out across the courtyard. The knights ride off in a tight column, and one of the men yawns hard, grins at his comrades, and says, "We're finally headed back to the royal capital." Then he adds, "It's going to be a long, brutal march, so get ready, we'll be camping for a while." Comment trails off as they cut the corner and step onto the town's main street. Straight ahead, the road is jam-packed on both sides with a massive crowd of townspeople. The second the knights' lights hit the scene, the crowd explodes into a huge, happy roar, hands flying up as everyone cheers like their hearts are about to burst. Voices roar from the crowd as a woman yells out her gratitude to the Third Knight's Order, and the guy beside her blurts that he personally heard they just saved the whole town from a nightmare disaster. They're stunned by the warm welcome. One swears the Margrave must have spread the word, and another laughs that getting thanked feels absolutely amazing. As the ride keeps rolling, a young boy's voice suddenly slices through the cheering, screaming for his big brother. As the nights were about to end, a young boy yanked his father's sleeve and begged, "Talk to Commander Justin too." Justin overheard and flashed a warm smile like this was exactly the right move. Then the boy whipped around to the commander and thanked him straight to the face for the pancakes, shouting that they were ridiculously delicious, while his sister jumped in too, saying the Margrave even handed out work to the soldiers who'd been hurt. Waves of emotion hit their father as he blurted out deep gratitude, saying he'd heard Commander Von Deer personally fought for them. Then, once Justin climbed into the saddle, he turned back and told the man to hold his family close. The boy waved, begged him to come again, and the commander promised he'd be back someday. Deep in the line, one knight leaned toward Naoki and pointed out how huge the crowd was. Then they sent him on his way, right as a formal cry erupted, ordering a salute to Commander Vendier and the Third Knight's Order of the Kingdom of Lafias, and every knight in formation snapped their fists up in perfect unison. Commander Justin stood at the front and roared instructions to his troops, with Vice Commander Oriole right beside him. He ordered the Third Knights to march in proud formation straight for the royal capital, and the whole line erupted in cheers as they charged into the next chapter. Inside the grand throne room, The king's booming voice cuts through the air, ordering the figure in front of him to lift their head. He turns to Justin Devontier and says, "I've got the gist from the monster subjugation report, but I want the real details from you, straight from your mouth." Justin nods quietly, ready to talk. From the edge of the hall, Prince Ernest watches the whole exchange like a hawk, his face set in cold, ruthless focus. Diana Talleyrand's stare cuts like a blade, raw with open hostility, and even the nobles behind her, including the prince, can't hide their sharp, shared disdain. With his head still bowed, Justin realizes the icy stares coming at him from every direction. Prince Ernest, the High Priest, and Lady Diane. He kicks off his formal report to the king, saying his first job was to crush the monsters crawling out of the Talleyrand graviate. Yet when he checks the scene, he realizes this isn't a few bad sightings. It's the build-up to a full-blown monster stampede. He keeps going, convinced the growing monster wave has a single cause, and he points right at the evil god's shattered fragments. Then he hunts them down, smashes them one by one, and stops the stampede for good. The king can't swallow it and demands proof, so Justin slaps down a jagged, dark rock and declares it's one of the evil god's shattered fragments. The whole court watches as he clings to his place, and the high priest finally steps in, demanding that Justin hand over the fragment. Then Justin nods, agrees, and makes it happen. Watches as the high priest leans in to inspect a dark, throbbing fragment, then squints hard and blurts out that this is the kind of problem you don't forget. That confirmation rips through the court like a thunderclap. Prince Ernest and the nobles freeze in disbelief as the big question hits hard. Did those infamous third knights really stop a monster stampede on their own, or is something off? The king silences the whole descent from his throne, then declares the evil god's fragment has been confirmed real, and that even a letter from the grave tallying our worth praises the third knight's order. He doesn't care what they've done before. This act right here is undeniable. Justin Devontier drops into a deep bow, and the king praises his outstanding work, then orders him to accept a reward. Justin humbly thanks him. Across the room, Prince Ernest leans in close, and Diane de Talleyrand clutches his arm like she can't breathe. She's clearly falling apart. He murmurs that she's okay, promising he'll protect her no matter what. Justin watches the whole exchange, and his face turns icy as he clenches his gloved fist, because if Ernest is planning to snatch Diane as his reward, then Justin knows he's got to make his own exact demand right now. He steps up to the throne and declares, loud and proud, that his own men won the day. Then he demands the reward money be handed to them to overhaul the barracks and upgrade their daily meals. That weird request blindsides the queen. She can only whisper meals in stunned disbelief while the whole court watches in silence. Her king of a husband throws his head back and roars with laughter, a smirk planted on his lips, saying her request sounds exactly like something a kid would blurt out. He tells Justin that asking to be a knight commander is way too humble a wish, and he pushes back. There are bigger fires to put out first, like how his men's morale is holding up. Then the king brings up Talleyrand's letter, saying it claims his daughter's attitude has shifted, and if that isn't true, he's got a hard time believing it. Perched on his throne, the king hears the commander out, calls it truly delightful, and grants the request, while Prince Ernest stands right in front of him with a quiet, knowing smile, his mind racing as he realizes everything that's happened lately has flipped his whole life upside down. Elsewhere, Diana Talleyrand is totally thrown off by this sudden twist, eyes blazing wide with confusion, fear creeping in as she scrambles to make sense of it, desperate to figure out what that man is even thinking. Prince Ernest Seaths can't stop asking himself what this man really is, because this feels impossible compared to the figure his parents were so hooked on, a so-called depraved, inhuman nightmare, with recalling how they talked him up. Yet now the prince swears he won't ever let the man's endless, insolent remarks fade from his memory. Clues scream there's a sneaky motive behind these ornate double doors, so he peers in, only to spot 3 silhouettes inside the room, and pushes in to uncover what that man is really after. Inside, Justin Devontier hovers a glowing orb of light over the maid's hand while Oreo watches, wide-eyed. The maid and another servant stare in confusion. Then Prince Ernest storms into the room, barks that he wants answers, and demands to know exactly what Vendier is doing there. He surges forward without a second thought, throwing himself between Vendier and the maids with his arms stretched wide like a shield. He confronts Von Deer and snaps that he'll tell his father about this incident. But Von Deer doesn't even flinch. He just says everything's fine now that he's here, and the prince finally realizes the earlier audience was all a carefully worn mask. Smirk's grin flickers as Von Deer lashes out, and you can practically feel him enjoying the prince's meltdown. Enraged, Prince Ernest barks that Von Deer has no right to play ruler off baseless assumptions, his voice dripping with pure contempt. Deer stays cool and snaps back that the prince's interrogation is rigged. He's not searching for truth. He's pushing only the answer he wants, and the poor maid, rattled with panic, tries to speak to the prince with a trembling voice. She drops to her knees and blurts the whole story. She was seconds away from serving tea when panic hit. The pot slipped, and she burned herself, but right then she insisted that Lord Vandier had stepped in with healing magic. As he slips through the window, the maid's voice rings out, thanking Von Gier over and over. He waves it off, then tells her to rest, because the healing will drain her and leave her wiped out, and the prince stands there in complete shock, unable to even speak. Ernest stood there rigid, his accusation landing with a dull thud, and in the doorway the maid, trying to shield him, kept her head bowed, her silence screaming that he'd been wrong. He snapped his head toward Justin Vandier and demanded to know what he thought he was doing. But Vandier stayed cool and asked if the prince was really trying to treat good deeds like they were worth scoffing at. He pressed on with a steel-cold voice, saying it was only natural the prince would be suspicious after everything he'd put him through before, and even Vandier admitted he had plenty to think about himself. His face snapped into a razor-sharp, knowing grin, and that's exactly why he spilled the truth. He wanted to prove he meant it with his actions, not just his words. Prince Ernest froze on the spot, his mouth stuck as he struggled to speak, then blurted a shaky warning to Vandier. Don't ever do something that could be read the wrong way again, before he hurried off with no time to explain. Vandier and Oriel stormed off, and the vice commander snapped that his commander was showing way too much favoritism. Vandier just admitted, yeah, maybe he'd been a bit childish about how he handled it. Later, he sank into his chair at his desk, replaying the whole encounter in his head, realizing the prince's rage didn't start with him. It crawled from a past hit involving his older brother and somehow latched onto him now. And with the prince already being watched, this mess was as dangerous as it was complicated. Then an attendant stormed in and told him to get ready for the evening banquet. In a swanky room, Prince Ernest tells Justin Vandier they still have time before the banquet kicks off, and Justin, slumped in his chair, grumbles that it's such a drag. Toward an empty courtyard they go, and the prince grins, saying Justin's been on the road too long, so a stroll here is the perfect way to burn off the boredom. Justin hesitates at the thought of roaming the royal castle on his own, but Ernest waves it off and says, "You've never been one for all that fancy stuff." Ernest promises he'll be watching from somewhere close enough, so Justin finally nods and goes along quietly. After taking the advice, he heads out by himself and drifts through the grand, arched colonnade, until the sun starts sinking and the whole capital turns chilly, like the Tally Rando may get hit out of nowhere by a sudden, unstoppable sneeze, right in the middle of it. It looks like it's yanking his focus outward. He jerks to a stop, stares into the courtyard, and his eyes widen as he spots two figures sprawled on a distant bench. In the same courtyard, Diane de Tolleran's friend urges her to swap into something warmer, but Diane, trembling, snaps back that she can't. Changing now would make her miss her duties to the princess. Suddenly, a heavy coat drops onto her bare shoulders, draping there like it's shielding a secret. She jerks her gaze upward. There's Justin Devontier right behind her, dropping his long coat around her like he'd been there the whole time. While her friend blurts his name to hype him up, Justin snaps at Diane to chill, then reminds her that as the future crown princess, her body comes first. Flustered, Diane protests that it's a waste of money and that she's not even worth all that worry. He pushes to hand the coat back, but Justin shuts it down, orders her to get changed right now, warns she'd be a total menace sneezing through the banquet, and says showing up late would just hand that certain princess the perfect excuse to complain. Her friend shows up fast, snapping, "Come on back to your room." Diane's cheeks burn with panic, but she nods and heads out, gripping the coat tight while Justin just watches them disappear. She pulls away, glances back over her shoulder, and thanks him for worrying, then snaps that it wasn't needed, not for her. Justin just stands there, watching her vanish, a quiet, unreadable smile tugging at his lips. The moment he's out of sight, she grabs the coat like it's a lifeline, her face full of worry as she can't stop thinking. Was that move really just a piece of something bigger? Moments later, Prince Ernest lunges at Justin and yanks him by the collar, fury blazing as he snaps that Diane has been his betrothed since their academy days. Then he demands to know what Justin is really up to just for coming near her. Once the phase kicks in, he just stands there with his arms crossed. Justin can't shake the feeling that Ernest is way too sincere with Diane, and that's exactly why Justin can't stand him. Then out of nowhere, a sudden sneeze hits, and he snaps to, deciding it's time to head back to, totally oblivious that this run-in is lighting the fuse for a whole new storm. Beneath a blazing full moon, a huge, proud mansion looms over the night, every window cold and dark. On the third night's watch, the members of the order trudged along a long stretch. One groaned about being starving, another daydreamed about a castle dinner, and a third kept asking whether their commander had come back, while another wanted to know if he planned to stay the night. The lounge door swings wide, and Commander Justin Vendier flops back over the sofa like it's the only thing holding him up, groaning in pure exhaustion while his vice commander, Oriel, stays quietly seated nearby. Greets him and clocks the exhaustion in his face. Justin nods and admits the dinner with the royal family was so tense he couldn't taste a bite, and getting grilled by the commander-in-chief on top of that pretty much wiped him out. The flashback tears open the real reason his nerves won't shut up. Some noblewoman spent time gossiping that the commander was supposedly beloved in the palace, even grinning at kids, then slyly wondered if he was just pretending he didn't care about Diane. Justin's face twists as the memory hits. The king himself stepped in and grilled him. Are you really Von Deer, or is someone wearing your face? And the insult hit Justin so hard that his annoyance kept swelling. Diane Nadelurand and Prince Ernest stood nearby, glaring the whole time, and that cold, disapproving stare pushed Justin's frustration to the breaking point. In the present, Justin flashes a smile at Oriol and admits that, even after everything they went through, it actually turned out to be a meaningful time. Then Oriol nods right back, saying it's the truth. The commander's reputation has been climbing fast. Right as the knights slip into the room, they tell him not to underestimate them. Then one of them asks if he brought souvenirs. Justin's sitting up now, and he fires back with good news, but it isn't something he can hold in his hands. With a cocky smirk, he leans back and tells them, all that hard work stopping the monster stampede earned you a week off. Then he reveals he poured the reward money into a huge upgrade for the old barracks, building a brand new shower room. The commander's announcement hit his men like a spark. Excitement surged through them, and one curly-haired knight threw his fist up in pure celebration. Another chimed in that once training was over, all they had to do was wait for the bath to be ready, while a third knight joked that everything would be way easier if they could use purification magic like the commander. Her upbeat banter got yanked to a stop when the commander's voice cut through the air. Then he tossed in one last reward. Their food budget would be permanently boosted. The room went stone cold, and their faces froze in pure, stunned disbelief. He leaned in with a grin so wide it looked almost predatory, confirming they'd finally be able to eat that delicious food anytime they wanted. Then the knight's disbelief cracked instantly, swallowed by a thunderous roar of pure joy. He just let out a quiet chuckle at their wild celebration, thinking, good work pays off. Then I stepped in to tell him she'd have the cooks ready his lifetime supply of food, and he only nodded back, got it. Later, alone in his comfy, well-furnished room, he popped the wine bottle and poured himself a drink. Then he grumbled that the dinner's food was exquisite, but the portions were criminally tiny, and an idea hit him. He still had plenty left from his expedition allowance. His eyes tore through the room, landing on a storage space he barely ever touched. A sly grin flickered across his lips as a plan snapped into place. He raised his glass and vowed to build his dream, a mini kitchen for his private room. Then everything blew apart when, one night, Simon stormed through the door, yelling with pure excitement that he'd heard about the shower room plan and wouldn't stop talking about it. Right then, two of his knights blocked his way and demanded to know if the leftover expedition money was his. Then insisted he split it with them too, and the argument ignited. But just as sparks flew, frantic banging rattled the door from the outside, while a tired voice groaned about the brutal long haul of trying to teach the Order's members. Justice de Vandier leans in and lays out his vision to his men, then wildly gestures as he contrasts two worlds, cooking over an open fire versus doing it the right way with real kitchen gear, like a frying pan. Naoki Mayo's orders set these guys to work, and they hustle to build a brick oven and slam in the cabinets, while Naoki Mayo and two other knights lean in from a nearby doorway, eyes wide, watching the whole thing unfold with pure curiosity. Later on, Justin shows up with a confident smirk, eyeing the work they've built, and then he cuts right to it. So, is it done? He stares at the finished room in awe, already spotting a fridge and an oven powered by magic. Basically the same comfy stuff from his old world, just with spells instead of wires. With a determined stare, he snaps his long hair back and his shadow looms over everything. Then he grins and says, all right, let's get this started. Now he's got an apron and a bandana on, gripping a rolling pin like it's a weapon, and he declares he's about to put the whole kitchen to the test. Me. Meanwhile, a few knights finally drop their guard and take a breather. One of them shouts that they should head into town, and the rest quickly nod like, yeah, that's the move. As they march along, one knight suddenly halts, nose twitching at a sweet, mouth-watering aroma, and the other perks up, calling it that same delicious scent, and blurts out, "Wait, is the commander cooking in the kitchen he built?" Then it hits him like lightning, and he thrusts his hand forward, shouting, "That's it." He and his buddy smashed through a nearby door, yelling for the commander, and he demanded, "What are you cooking? What amazing thing smells this good and floods the whole corridor?" They're greeted by a furious, blindfolded Justin, barking that they never knocked. Then the first knight rushes to the doorway and spills out non-stop apologies, while another knight slips in, grinning, and asks if Justin's secretly test-baking sweets for the new kitchen. One of his men blurts out, "Is the food ready?" Justin swivels toward him and says, "I was just about to serve it with tea," then orders the night guard not to touch it without his word. Nearby, another subordinate just watches, flustered by the whole commotion of coworkers and patients. The pastries and tea finally sat right on the table, and the knight asked again if he could eat. Then Justin's voice came from off-screen. "Go ahead, it's fine." But he made only one pastry and one cup for each of you, and the knight couldn't hide his grin because that was plenty. The knights take a bite, and their faces instantly light up, pure surprise, then huge delight, blasting that this treat is absolutely delicious, and one of them even swears it makes him crave a cup of tea. Justin takes a taste too, wearing a quiet, satisfied little smile like he just nailed it. Knight chimes in, swearing it's more than delicious enough. Then Justin lets out a small sigh and admits the result still isn't quite right, like he's got to get the hang of the equipment first, while Naoki Mayo clocks his commander's brutal perfectionism. He smirks at his crew and tells them the sweets were just a test for the cooking appliances. Then he makes it clear he's not baking another batch for a long while, and the look on the guys' faces instantly crumples into disappointment. Naoki steps up and says he gets it, clocking that Justin seems like the kind who'd rather skip eggs, maybe because he's so careful with everything. And with a bright grin, Naoki asks the commander to cook up something different for them next time. The quest has him feeling it in his bones. Justin's back at the counter, slamming together a fresh batch of dough, admitting he's stuck with the same few sweet tricks, and deciding right then to hunt down a recipe book for something brand new.